All right. Thanks for being here, everyone. Really appreciate it. We'll get started in 1 second here. It's a big day. There was a lot of news stories coming out. What's up, Clearly Clever? Sorry I couldn't get in touch with you. So for those of you who don't know, I do block shifts, so I worked a lot of today and was unable to keep up with things as much as I would have otherwise liked. Clearly Clever and me were going to do something kind of live that was going on. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. So you get what you get from me today. But yeah, excited to be here. Thanks, everyone, for listening in. So there's two big news stories that I wanted to cover today, and they both kind of connect in a way that you might not think. And that is, of course, the IG report came out, which we are all expecting. But also this report came out about abuses of lies that we were told by basically the establishment, the intel community and stuff about Afghanistan and how we were basically lied to about that situation. And I think it's worth talking about that and seeing exactly why we should be very skeptical of just taking the intel agencies and groups like that at face value. So let's start with the IG report, which is where I'm going to spend the bulk of my time. Was the audio not working or something? I'm losing all my viewers. 1 second. Check. It says my connection's good. Just let me know if the audio is not working because everyone just went out for a moment. I don't know if it was because my connection or my audio is not working. So anyways, thanks for being here. So let's start with the IG report. Now, I'm not going to BS you and claim that I've read every word of the report. I've not. What I have read was the parts focused on Carter Page and the FISA abuse applications, which to me was what this was all about. Now, there are other serious questions about the Russia investigation, things like what did the DOJ know, people like Bruce Orr, what kind of intelligence assets, aka spies, were being sent to people like Papadopoulos, Flynn, Manafort, Carter Page, etc., right? Those things are all important, but what I'm going to focus on, what I've personally read, is the stuff focused on Carter Page. Now, I hope to later in the week have time to go through the entire IG report and give my takes on those other issues. But clearly, FISA abuse is the biggest scandal that would be coming out of this. Now, I'm going to go back here in a minute and read you something that I wrote in October 26th of 2017. I'm on a conspiracy theory website called Above Top Secret. I did my best to make it so you can't see anyone else post because I don't want to out even people's anonymous names on there. But I'm going to talk about what I wrote back then and why basically I've been vindicated. But it's not just about me. It's been the vindication of all sorts of people that have been maligned. Yeah, small-time guy like me, have been made fun of. I'm a conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat wearer, blah, blah, blah. This was all garbage. But then you had people like Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity. You had people like John Solomon. You had people like Greg Jarrett, Sarah Carter, a bunch of great people, Kim Strassel, that have been on this. You've also had people on the left that have been calling this out. Jimmy Dore, Aaron Mattei, Glenn Greenwald, Michael Tracy. These are all people that hate Trump. They called out this Russia collusion BS from the get-go. What they realized, the people on the left and the people on the right, I think most of them, sure, there are some bias hacks that just want to defend Trump, and that's why they got the story right. But I think what most of us realized was the biggest threat to our country and our election system isn't anything that Russia could do, or North Korea could do, or China could do, or the UK or Germany or France, or all of those countries combined. Because we're open enough that, like, honestly, how many votes were swung by, these Russian trolls? Not many. But what can actually swing an election is a trio, or what's the word I'm looking for? A cohort, combining of a bunch of corrupt officials and agencies in this country with power. And that is the abuse of the intel agencies and the corruption of them, the corruption of major politicians, and the corruption of the mainstream media that enables them to be a propaganda mouthpiece for this corruption. Those things combined, 95% of all the corruption, of all the ability to kind of take away our voice in our elections and our vote comes from that. That's what I was alleging back in October 2017. That's why this was a big scandal. Sure, let's say hypothetically the Russia collusion story had been true. Let's say that everything they said was true and that Trump and some people connected to him decided to reach out to Putin and to get them to basically hack Hillary Clinton or the DNC and then release that information. That can only be so powerful. I mean, that's terrible. If that is what happened, if Trump or his team had worked with Russia to encourage the hacking, they should be brought to justice. I still believe that. I don't see any proof of that. Obviously, it's been debunked. That's the Mueller report showed. But that's fine. I could see how, even those allegations taken at 100% face level, it is a small drop in the bucket compared to a sitting president, that'd be Obama, defending his party, the Democratic Party, by going after and spying on the opposing candidate, the Republican candidate, who would be Donald Trump, by using unverified opposition research that was paid for by the DNC and sourced by Kremlin agents. Do you understand? I mean, at face value, let's just start with that last part, right? Remember, I've said this over and over, and I haven't got a straight answer. We were told that it was a problem that Trump was trying to get dirt on Hillary from Russians. And so in order to prove that, we allowed Hillary and her team in the DNC to get dirt on Trump from Russians to prove that Trump was getting dirt on Hillary from Russians. Does that make any sense whatsoever? At the face value, this story makes no sense. But then it gets even worse when you think about what you're talking about with Trump is that having basically people in the Ukraine or in Russia act illegally to benefit his campaign. But that pales in comparison to the Democrats using the most powerful intel and investigative agencies in the history of the world to spy on their opponent. We're told Watergate was, I still have people say that today. I've had people say this, the last bastion of those cheering for corruption, those that say you can't question the intel agency. After every one of their straw men have been knocked down, every one of their positions, well, what about this? Nope. Everyone's been knocked down today, and I'll go through them all. The last bastion of hope is saying, well, it's not as bad as Watergate. Not as bad as Watergate. A couple of bumbling fools operating for Nixon went into a hotel and tried to spy on his opponent. Now imagine instead of a couple bumbling fools if Nixon had used the FBI and that the mainstream media ran cover for that the whole time and that the FBI leaked to the media to harm Nixon's opponent. And Nixon went and told a bunch of foreign leaders, hey, my opponent might be in bed with the Russians or the Chinese, etc. And that 3-year investigations were launched against his opponent. No, we just had a couple of bumbling oafs in a hotel. That was enough to bring Nixon down. This is of a magnitude so much greater. And not only that, but it also is of a magnitude so much greater because so much of what goes on in our country, particularly foreign policy-wise, all sorts of domestic issues as well, though, we just have to accept these intel agencies' word for things. You see it in the impeachment hearings. I got made fun of when I said I was voting for Trump because I wanted someone who was against the kind of deep state. Oh, that's a conspiracy theory, deep state. What are you talking about? If you, in good faith, wonder what I'm talking about the unelected bureaucrats, people in the intel agencies, people that are in large corporations that basically are controlling the way our politicians vote, and the establishment politicians on both sides that seem to pretend on face value to disagree about things, but when it comes to the important issues, bailing out bankers, foreign regime change wars, keeping themselves in power, they always vote the same way. That's why the only times they applaud Trump's when he's bombing Syria, etc. That's what I'm talking about. I was made fun of. Deep state, the deep state doesn't exist. Right? Oh, no. And then we were told, at every turn we were told, you can't question the FBI. Can you believe that Trump will be skeptical of the FBI? Remember that when Trump was talking with Putin, he said, well, I'm skeptical of some of these FBI conclusions. Can you believe that? Trump's skeptical of his own FBI? Remember when we were told by CNN, how dare Trump or anyone else question the FBI? That harms our country. It could reveal sources and methods to want to question or investigate what the FBI did. Lives could be put in danger. These are great people at the FBI. You can't question them. They're so great, we'll bring them on CNN. We'll hire them as correspondents once they're fired. That's what we were told. To this day, today, media outlet after media outlet, I watched clips of saying, oh, Trump was wrong. The FBI did nothing wrong. I watched Comey go on TV and brag nothing wrong. I watched Brennan tweet, see, nothing happened wrong. I watched Baker say Trump, he demands an apology from Trump for the FBI. Think about that. Part of what this IG report showed was they literally had one FBI person falsify evidence against Trump. If that was any other president in history, and you had the FBI falsify evidence to spy on their campaign, do you think anyone would have the nerve in the mainstream media or any of these former officials from the intel agencies to come out and say, aha, see? It was okay that we made up that information and lied to spy on the president. We demand an apology from the president. You think that would have ever happened? But that's where we're at today. So we're going to focus on the Carter Page stuff I'm trying to think of the order I want to do this. I think I'll first focus on the IG report, and then I'll talk about the implications of it. So let's talk about the warrant with Carter Page. So I had wrote, in fact, I'll start with this. Let's see. Now, this website's called Above Top Secret that I'm on. And my name is Grambler on there. That's the wonderful Bill Hicks is my avatar, which I'll probably change that at some point. But I want you to notice the date on this. You can see it right here. October 26, 2017, 9:30 in the morning, because I have no life. So I was writing this at 9:30. So I'm just going to read this to you. It's again, October 26, 2017. That's more than 2 years ago, right? Now, there were people that were speaking up around this time and slightly before me, but I think I was pretty early on this train. And I think I was also quite reserved in my comments. So I just want to read to you what I wrote back then, 2017. I write, there are a lot of troubling allegations about this past election and the period before then. Although no doubt questions of Russia influence are important, I contend that we are seeing a far more serious threat and scandal play out before our very eyes. That scandal is as follows. If, and that's a big if, this dossier that we now know was paid for by Hillary's team was used by the Obama administration to obtain FISA warrants against Trump's team, it is the biggest political scandal I could ever recall in the U.S. I understand that all sides do oppo research, and that occasionally that can be used for an investigation. But I want to highlight the reasons that I think that this situation is so much more serious and a very credible threat to our political system. I'll give 5 reasons. 1, the least important, it proves the hypocrisy of the Dems in the media, not all of them, but most, that were hysterical about the Russia collusion, particularly when Don Jr. met with Trump Tower. I won't spend much time on this, but look, some of these people were saying about Don Jr., there were things like they used the information from Russians to undermine their opponent was committing an act of treason. Remember that? Oh, Trump's Don Jr. treason. He's going to prison. Now, all of a sudden, they're silent and deflecting. Now, what does this have to do with it? Because this is when we were just learning in 2017, late 2017, that the sources, not only did Hillary's team pay, they lied about it for a year. Not only did they pay for the dossier, but it was sourced by Kremlin officials. Okay? So if you had a problem with Don Jr. possibly talking to Russians to get dirt on Hillary, why all of a sudden is it totally cool that the Democrats paid to get dirt from Kremlin officials on Trump? Second, Hillary's team lied about funding it. It's not catastrophic, but it sort of makes the rest of the issues magnified. Given the importance of the dossier itself and the Russian investigation in general, people, especially Congress, should have been informed of who paid for this material. In fact, Fusion GPS and others refusing to disclose this info makes this worse. Why are they hiding this? It seems that they know that paying for the foreign service sources who were getting dirt from Russian agents would hurt their narrative, so they lied, causing the questions how serious these people are about reading out Russian interference. And that's exactly right, and the IG report bore that out today. One of the things that's said in the IG report that was corrupt was the FBI never officially told the FISA judges, even after they knew it was paid for by the DNC, who paid for this information. They withheld that. And we were told over and over, that's not true. That's not true. They clearly told the FISA judge that it was some. Well, the IG report disagrees. And remember, they lied about it for over a year. You hear this all the time. Oh, Trump tells 5,000 lies a day. That's what they always say. Oh, all these lies every day. Trump tells them, right? Tells 5,000 lies a day. And why, if he's not guilty, why is he lying? Well, here we know that Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, and the Democrats, particularly the Democrats, lied about who paid for this for over a year. Why did they do that? 3, due to the fact that it relied on Kremlin-connected sources, this dossier could have actually been the most direct way for Russia to influence the U.S. Remember, most investigators admit that less than wanting a particular side to win, Russia just wanted to muck up the whole system and cause problems. All they had to do was give the Hillary team paid Steele some salacious material, and lo and behold, the government of this country is grinded to a halt, and the division's higher than ever. Now, keep in mind, I wrote this October 26, 2017. Could I have been any more right? We're still talking about the Mueller investigation. We're still talking about, they're actually talking about during the impeachment hearing, this all goes back to Russia. It's all Russian talking points, Russia. They're still talking about it. It's still the case against Trump. I'm writing this in 2017. We're more than 2 years past that. Still the case. Now, I'm saying here, what's the most direct way? Did the Kremlin influence our system? Well, we know that the most serious allegations in the dossier, particularly those directed to Carter Page, as the IG showed today, were sourced by Kremlin officials. We now know that information was untrue, as the dossier and the Mueller report showed. It was never verified, yet it was still used to spy on this Trump-connected person, Carter Page. That is a bigger influence into our system than anything else. Now, the Democrats and their media mouthpieces have spent the past 2 weeks saying anytime someone talks about Ukrainian meddling in the election, that's Russian talking points. That's spreading Russian talking points. Let me ask you this. If it's true, which they're alleging, that the Kremlin was the source for the Steele dossier, these two Kremlin officials, who's spreading Russian disinformation more? Who's spreading the most effective Russian disinformation? Well, that would be the Democrats. That would be their media mouthpieces, wouldn't it? That constantly, day after day after day after day after day, not only got the investigation they demanded, but went on and on about how Trump's a Russian stooge and this and that and the other. That's exactly what the Kremlin wanted, distrust in our government. And keep in mind, Jim Jordan's questioning of Mueller during the Mueller hearings, where he said Joseph Mifsud lied to the FBI, right? Yeah. Joseph Mifsud was the Russian agent that started this whole thing, right? Right. Why wasn't Joseph Mifsud charged then? Isn't it weird? Mueller was tasked with investigating Russian interference in our system, but what did he say when that got brought up? We don't want to talk about that. What did he mention about the Steele dossier? Not a word. He didn't investigate at all. He said it was beyond his purview to investigate the Kremlin agents that were the source of these lies that were used to spy on Trump. Number 4, now we start to get to the huge problems. If this dossier was used to obtain FISA warrants, it's one of the most corrupt things that I've ever seen in this country. People mention how all sides, including Trump, pay groups for opposition research and how sometimes that could lead to an investigation. I agree with this. But those investigations are at least known to the public. For example, the possible Uranium One deal investigation. Everybody knows this is going to happen. Now imagine instead of this being made public, the info was given to Trump, who then got FISA warrants, surveyed his political opponents without their knowledge. There would be an outrage. Let's look at all the ways this is disgusting. First, the dossier has disgusting allegations that have nothing to do with crimes. The P story was written in a very amateur way, has parts that can be proven false in a very short period of time, Cohen meeting in Prague. For this then to be used to survey a political opponent's campaign for president is insane. The threshold for something like this has to be immensely high, or else every sitting president can utilize the intel community against their opponent. Next is the fact that this is as incredibly bad as getting a secret warrant to survey his opponents would be. Obama then went out of his way to make sure this info was shared with as many intel people as possible, which all but assured leaks to the press. A situation like this involving a candidate for president is so serious that it should be kept as tight-lipped as possible, but Obama did the opposite. Remember, he admitted he laxed the regulations so that all the intel agencies could share information before he left about this. Then predictably it got leaked to the press. Obama also told European allies that Trump may have shady connections to the Kremlin, thereby jeopardizing relationships with these countries in the event that Trump won, which happened. All of this is unique and the most authoritarian election influencing action I've ever heard of. The precedent has now been set for a sitting president's party to pay foreign agents to go to countries that we are rivals or enemies with, get any kind of poorly written or scandalous info from that country's agents about other parties' candidates, then, without the other party knowing it, get FISA warrants to investigate and survey them with the FBI, spread that info far and wide to make sure that it gets leaked to the press, and even tell allies about it. In effect, this makes the FBI a tool for the sitting party to act as its own opposition research team, a team that can violate your rights and arrest you. It is the most Orwellian thing imaginable and should be rejected in the strongest possible terms, and all of those responsible need to be held accountable. October 26, 2017, I was writing this. Number 5. Then there's the matter of the FBI itself. They were going to pay Steele to continue his research, which is unbelievable. They did pay him for a while. Not only was this material Steele gave them scandalous, written poorly, and easily proven wrong in some parts, but then they decide they want more. Think about this. The FBI has to know, given the fact that this info could literally dictate who wins the presidency and possibly prove Russia trying to subvert that election, they had to know this is one of the most serious and difficult cases they would deal with. That's backed up in the IG report. It says the FBI even knew. Leaders of the FBI said, we know that our decisions here will be scrutinized no matter what later. So they knew. Yet they still took the actions they did. So what do? They hire a foreign agent who was paid for by one of the candidates' teams to go to Russia and use Russian sources to get dirt? That's outrageous. But it doesn't stop there. Now the FBI, and this continued, this was 2017, I'm writing this. Now the FBI is stonewalling congressional subpoenas to testify as to this situation. And most importantly, as to whether the dossier was used to get warrants. Remember, the FBI fought tooth and nail to keep this from getting public. Every single American should be livid over this. This reeks of the FBI being a political tool, not to mention all of the leaks that were coming out of the FBI in the first place. It seems as if the FBI is basically acting as its own entity that is not accountable to the people. We're talking about one of the most powerful agencies in the world, with the power to look into anyone's life at a whim, possibly favoring one political party and having no accountability to the people whatsoever. It's a nightmare. Remember when Schumer said the intel community could get back at people that anger them? And this is just one issue, and a bunch of very questionable issues involving the FBI recently. Due to all of those reasons, I believe that if, and again, it's a big if, this dossier was used to get FISA warrants, this is the biggest political scandal I've ever seen and the biggest threat to our system I've ever seen. People are worried about Russia influencing our system, which they have every right to be. But that pales in comparison to how dangerous it would be to have a sitting party weaponize the FBI against political opponents. October 26, 2017. Now, why do I bring this up? Is it bragging? Is it me talking about what a big man I am? Yes, that is part of it. Because I do have an ego and I am arrogant. Yes, that's absolutely true. I called this as early as anyone as I remember. But the other reason I bring it up in more of a, and all joking aside, is as follows. Most of you have probably listened to me before. I talk about this all. Do I have any secret connections? Am I a wealthy individual? Do I have, some kind of computer knowledge to be able to get information other people don't have? Do I have connections in the CIA, the FBI, Trump administration, the Russian government? No. Am I overly intelligent? No. Do I have just tons of free time to sit around and do this? Somewhat, but I am working about 70, 80 hours a week. So how did I get this story right? How did me and other people like me, people like you might not have a YouTube channel or been talking about it on blogs, but maybe you were talking to your friends. Maybe you were putting on about Facebook or Twitter. You were putting up about this. But there were people. How did we get it right? How did the mainstream media and the establishment, again, on both sides, never Trump or Republicans too, how did they get it so wrong? How's that possible? And given that they were wrong about the Mueller report, right? They're wrong about the impeachment stuff, though I guess we still have to prove that to some people. We will. We'll prove it. They're wrong about all this. They couldn't be more wrong. Yeah, we're supposed to believe them today. This is a big nothing burger. It's a big nothing burger, the IG report. Now, I could go through that thread and show, I argued for days. People, this was the first objection people made. No way this dossier was used for a FISA warrant. I'm like, I don't know. Reports are showing that could be the case. Would you admit if it was used, it would be a problem? Then it switched to, okay, even if it was used, it was probably only for one person, probably Carter Page. I'm like, nonetheless, by spying on Carter Page, they get everyone he's talking to, which is basically the entire campaign. And even if that's not the case, they're spying on someone connected to a presidential campaign using opposition research that wasn't verified. That's terrible, right? And then they said, okay, but there's no doubt a litany of evidence that was used in the FISA warrant other than that. Well, we know from the IG report, as I'll show you here in a minute, that's not true. There wasn't. If it wasn't, just like had been alleged by Nunez and all that. Remember the hashtag release the memo, the Nunez memo? There's someone who's vindicated today, although the media won't admit it. Remember that? Remember what that memo was about? It was Nunez and them saying Grassley also released a memo from the Senate. It was them saying, look, this dossier was used to get a FISA warrant to spy on people connected to Trump's campaign. This is terrible. And then when we released the memo, all the media said, this is garbage. And Schiff released a memo and they said, it's all garbage. This story's garbage. And they said, and how dare Nunez criticize the FBI? It's hurting the country. And if you have questions about the FBI, you're hurting the country. And Nunez's memo is jeopardizing lives. Remember that? That's what they told you. It was a big nothing burger. The memo was a nothing burger. That was verbatim, what they told you day after day until the story went away. Well, it turns out that memo was true. It was accurate. Isn't that weird? Then they said, okay, maybe the dossier was used and that was the bulk of getting the FISA, and they wouldn't have got it without it. But no doubt it was verified by other sources. Well, it turns out we now know that's not the case. And by the way, not everyone's a bad faith actor that disagreed with me. On that thread alone there, I had many Democrat people that were talking to me saying, I guess if what you're alleging came true, then I would have a problem with it. Couldn't find them today. But maybe they'll come out and say, wow, yeah. That's why it's important when you're arguing with people and they'll say this didn't happen, this didn't happen. Get them on record like, okay, but if it did, if we later find out it did happen, would you have a problem with it? Because I'm waiting for some of the regular people that argue with me on that site and others to kind of peek their head out and say, oh, this is a big nothing burger. And I'm going to say, well, excuse me, here's your quote from 2017 saying, sure, I guess if it happened like you said it did, then it would be a problem, but it didn't. Now all of a sudden when we find out it happened like I said it did, now it's no big deal. That's the way it always works. They just move the goalpost. So that's why I was trying to show that I knew this in 2017. Now, I put the caveat on there, if this dossier was used. Because as arrogant as I am, and as much as I think I know, I leave room for maybe the evidence will show something different. But I was pretty sure, and as time went on, I got more and more sure, and I was right. Now, let me get to the end, right? Let's skip ahead to the end before I get into the details of the actual IG report. Here's the ending, right? You can say what you want about, I'm so distrusting of these intel agencies, even the Durham report, right? I don't know that I'm so disgusted by seeing criminality from people at the top my entire life and no one ever getting punished of significance that I just doubt it'll happen. I really do. I'm a pessimist about it. But that doesn't mean that me and you can't realize how corrupt this is when the evidence is presented to us. That's the only way things will change. Well, for individuals to say, I've had a gut full of this, I see the evidence, and I'm not going to say, well, there's the evidence, but it must not be compelling because the FBI decided not to prosecute anyone. Or here's the evidence, but it must not be true because, the IG report didn't recommend criminal referrals. Now, maybe you hate Trump. Maybe you think this is a big nothing burger, right? Okay, that's fine. As long as it's in good faith, I'll have conversations with you too. Some of my best friends hate Trump. Do you realize that what's going on here, what the end of the story is, what's the end game today? Literally the IG, if what he's saying is true, and I have no doubt to disbelieve this, he's not saying, oh, the FBI had every right to open this investigation because there was a bunch of incredible evidence. He says over and over again at the beginning, it is because the bar for starting an investigation is so low. Therefore, technically, they met their obligation. That's how he defends it. He goes on to say, but they were incredibly misleading with the FISA application, and I couldn't prove bias, which I'll get to that allegation as well. But do you see the problem with what he's saying? And he's probably right. Horowitz is probably right. Technically, the idea of just starting an investigation, that fundamental question, was there evidence to start an investigation? The law is written so loosely that, yeah. Now, let's say you hate Trump. Do you understand the implication of this? This means that Trump has every right to go pay a law firm, to get a foreign spy, to go to China, to go to Russia, to go to North Korea, to go to Iran, wherever. Get any unverified garbage on his opponent. Use that to spy on his opponent. Heck, his FBI, they can lie if they want. Make up info, spy on the opponent. Just get a finger wag. That's our politics now. That's what you, those that hate Trump and have cheered for the intel agencies, that's what you're cheering for now. Now, I know you'll scream and gnash your teeth and say, oh, no, Trump can't do that. It's horrible for Trump to do that. You know how I know that? Because you're screaming in the impeachment hearings right now. Trump just talking to Zelensky on the phone is enough to get the Democrats and their media allies foaming at the mouth. This is so unprofessional. How is it the intel agent people are more upset about Trump's phone call than they are about their own agencies making up evidence to spy on Trump? 60-something counts of violations to a FISA court, pointed out in the IG report, 9 of which were outright lies, 9 of which were intentionally withholding information, and the other 33 or whatever of which We're just not providing information, not verifying it, which they're required to do. Yet the intel agent, they're more upset. Trump suggested that an investigation start to Zelensky about that's outrageous. James Baker demanded an apology for Trump about the FBI. An agency, a scathing report was just released. 60-something odd times they violated FISA court procedures to spy on Trump. And the heads of the FBI are demanding apologies from Trump. That's where we're at today. And that was made possible by you, the average Trump hater that was willing to get in bed with the intel agencies to bring him down. You could have beat him at the polls. You could listen to my channel. I give you a bunch of stuff that I disagree with Trump for. If the Democrats would have called me, I'd say, this is what you need to get rural people to vote for you. Here's what you need to be focused on. You could have came up with actual plans and issues. Opioid crisis, healthcare crisis, suicide crisis, veterans not getting health care, the border crisis. There's tons of real issues going on, deficit spending. You could have talked about that, but instead you focused on what? We're going to get in bed with the intel agencies. And what did I say from back there in October? When I'm arguing with people, I wrote that October 26, 2017. What am I saying when I'm arguing with Democrats there? I'm like, you better be careful because this is going to be used against someone on the left next. If the intel agency is allowed to be this corrupt in the open, then nothing will stop them. If they're allowed to get away with this, why would they ever change? You think Tulsi's got a chance? You think Bernie's got a chance? You think Jill Stein's got a chance? No way. Those are people that might end their corrupt wars. So that's where we're at. That's the ending of the story. Now, let's go through the FISA report itself. I'm going to start on page 7. And I'm going to go through, again, I'm just talking 476 pages. I'm basically talking about the first 25 and then a couple of the later chapters. Okay? I will get to the rest later, but I'm not going to sit here and pull your leg like I know what I'm talking about when I haven't even read the report. So bear with me on that. Let me shrink my beautiful face again. Real small this time. I know you all miss me. I'm starting the right here. Decision to seek FISA authority. One of the first claims that was made when I wrote that in October 2017, and all the talking I've been doing since then has been the following. There's no proof whatsoever that the FISA application was reliant on the Steele dossier. That's what we were told. So we have to go through, and what happens is, instead of having a good argument, these people just throw out a bunch of garbage, like scattershot, like the shotgun strategy. Instead of saying, look, here is a really sophisticated argument as to why you're wrong, or a real factual-based argument. They just throw out a bunch of claims, and they think then, well, because I throw a bunch of garbage out there, then that must prove that this is garbage. And that's what constantly happens. Then that leads to, CNN does that, and then Washington Post does it, then the New York Times does it, then MSNBC does it, then BuzzFeed does it, then the random person you're talking to does it. And it allows them to say, everything's been debunked. We all know it's all garbage. It's all been debunked. That's what they're allowed to say. You're just a conspiracy theorist. That's how that argumentation starts. So you have to painstakingly go through, line by line, what they're talking about and say, okay, this wasn't true. So claim number 1. The Steele dossier wasn't a crucial part. They could have got this. They could have got the FISA application on Carter Page without it. From the IG report, page 7. Decision to seek FISA authority. We determined that the Crossfire Hurricane Team's receipt of Steele election reporting on September 19, 2016 played a, quote, central and essential role in the FBI department's decision to seek the FISA order. As noted above, when the team first sought to pursue a FISA order for Page in August 2016, a decision made by the OGC, OII, or both, that more information was needed to support probable cause finding that Page was an agent of a foreign power. So they ceased discussion about a FISA warrant at the time. On September 19th, 2016, the same day that Crossfire Hurricane Team first received Steele's election reporting, the team contacted the FBI OGC again about seeking a FISA order for Page and specifically focused on Steele's reporting and drafting the FISA request. 2 days later, on September 21st, The FBI OGC unit chief conducted the NSDOI unit chief and advised him that the FBI believed it was ready to support FISA request regarding Page. Almost immediately, the attorney began preparation of the application. Now, what does that mean? What's being said here? Basically, these agents were chomping at the bit. Remember, agents like Peter Strzok that needed an insurance policy, remember them? They're chomping at the bit. Oh, we want to spy on Trump's team. We got to spy on Trump's team. This is before the election. This is September 2016. The heads up, the people they needed to go to at the head of the FBI and stuff, the lawyers, in order to get the FISA application, said, look, there's just not enough here to spy on Carter Page. You just don't have anything. That didn't stop the FBI from wanting it. But they were like, we can't in good faith allow this. Okay, what changed? Well, they got the Steele dossier. Now all of a sudden they're like, oh, yeah, this is good. Now we can spy. Now let me see. I'm going to read this part to you to further buttress this claim. And by the way, in like chapter 8, I think there's a lot more on this. Over here on the left, page 8. By the way, let me put this in the chat so that no one can accuse me of being disingenuous, reading some fake report. It's from the justice.gov website. Here it is. You can check it out for yourself. All right, page 8, starting on the left. On or about September 23rd, the OI attorney began working on the FISA application. Over the next several weeks, the OI attorney prepared and edited a draft application using information principally provided by the FBI case agent assigned to the Carter Page investigation at the time, and in a few instances by OGC attorney or other Crossfire Hurricane team members. The drafting process culminated in an application that asserted the Russian government was attempting to undermine influence the upcoming election, and the FBI believed Carter Page was acting in conjunction with the Russians in those efforts. The application statement of facts supporting probable cause to believe that Page was an agent of Russia was broken down in the following 5 main elements. Now, remember, this is a crucial point. It can't be understated or overstated. They weren't just alleging that Carter Page was a bumbling fool, because the way FISA applications are supposed to work is you can't violate someone's First Amendment rights based on that. In other words, they're going to take, or not First Amendment, Fourth Amendment. They can't violate your right to privacy and spy on you as an American citizen unless they have probable cause that you are an agent of a foreign power, a foreign spy, basically. So they weren't arguing, look, Carter Page is a buffoon, he was stumbling, bumbling, and he did XYZ accidentally. They were arguing he was a willing and active participant for the Russians, trying to undermine our country. Okay? So in their efforts to do that, they cite 5 things. Now, this is the straw man that will be used. Well, straw man is not the right word. It's the argument that will be used by the media and the left. It's like an extension of an argument they're already making. See? It wasn't just the Steele dossier. There were other facts in there. Let's see what the 5 facts were. Okay, ready? Now, remember, these other 4 facts, other than the Steele dossier, they existed prior to the Steele dossier. And they had lawyers at the FBI said, no. This isn't good enough to get the application for a FISA warrant. So let's read what they are. Number 1, the efforts of the Russian intelligence service to influence a presidential election. Okay, Russians want to influence the election. That's true basically every election we have. Fair enough, I believe that. 2, Russian government's attempted coordination with members of the Trump campaign based on FFG information reporting the suggestion of assistance from the Russians to someone associated with the Trump campaign. Russians reached out to the Trump campaign. Sure, I can believe that too. Doesn't say that Trump's team accepted it, offered to do anything nefarious or anything like that. So far, we have 2 reasonable statements. Russians want to influence the election? Sure. They're reaching out to a campaign? Sure. Nothing nefarious, nothing even remotely criminal alleged there. Number 3, Page had connections with Russia. Okay, that's not a crime, is it? I know you wouldn't know this by talking to the media or the Democratic Party. Perfectly fine for you to have business relationships in Russia, to have friends in Russia, to work at universities in Russia, whatever. That's not a crime as much as the media would like to make it because they're the new McCarthyist. But it's still perfectly legal. So we got through 3 of them. That's the first 3. That's all just background information. That doesn't prove anything. That's not a reason to suggest someone's a Russian spy. Let's skip over 4. Let's go to number 5. Page statement to an FBI confidential informant, basically, in October of 2016 that he had an open checkbook from certain Russians to fund a think tank project. Fair enough. Again, that's not a crime. You want a think tank, you want to be able to talk about possible policy, to teach people, things like that. That's fine. It can be backed by Russians. No problem whatsoever. Those are the other 4 facts. Did you hear anything in there remotely nefarious at all? I mean, other than the fact that we know the media just wants to scream, Russians! There's Russians! You talk to Russians? Other than that, nothing that I just cited there. There's 4. That's 4 of the 5. With those 4, do you think there's any chance whatsoever of getting a warrant? Let's say you can say that about me. Let's say I was a little more erudite. And it's like, okay, Russians try to influence the election. Okay. Russians reached out to people in Trump's campaign. Okay. Rob talked to a Russian once. Okay. Which I don't know that I ever have. Ukrainian. I was friends with the Ukrainian. And Rob said that he's got a project. He was going to be working on a think tank that some Russians were going to provide us money for. Okay. So what? Spy on Rob? Have the FBI spy on Rob? No, that's not proof of anything. Number 4, the one I skipped over. What's it say? This is what was used for the FISA application again. Quote, Page's alleged coordination with the Russian government on 2016 U.S. presidential election activity based on Steele's reporting. That's it. That's why they got the application. That's why they were allowed to spy on Page. The other 4 points are nothing. It's just background information. The only thing alleging any wrongdoing was point number 4. Now it says right in that point, it was from Steele's dossier. Now maybe you're still thinking, but wait a minute. Surely point 4 wasn't just based on Steele's reporting. Surely there was other information. Let's go further into the IG report. Now we're on the right side here of page 8. The role of Steele election reporting in the first application. Quote, in support of the 4th element, remember that 4th one, the only one that matters. In the FISA application, Carter Page alleged coordination with the Russian government on 2016 U.S. presidential election activities. The application relied entirely on the following information from Steele reports 80, 94, 95, and 102. Here's the 4 things. 1, compromising info about Hillary Clinton been compiled for years by the Kremlin and been fed to the Kremlin to the Trump campaign for an extended period of time. We know that's not true now, but that came from the Steele dossier. 2, during a July 2016 trip to Moscow, Page met with Igor Sechin, chairman of Russian energy conglomerate Rosensoft and a close associate of Putin, to discuss future cooperation and the lifting of Ukraine-related sanctions against Russia, with Igor Devikin, a highly placed Russian official, to discuss sharing with the Trump campaign derogatory information about Clinton. We now know that's not true. That came from the Steele dossier. 3, Page was an intermediary between Russia and the Trump campaign's team, then manager Manafort, and a well-developed conspiracy of cooperation, which led to Russia's disclosure of hacked DNC emails to WikiLeaks in exchange for Trump campaign agreement to sideline Russia investigation in the Ukraine as a campaign issue. We now know that's not true. Came from the Steele dossier. 4, Russia released the DNC emails to WikiLeaks in an attempt to swing voters to Trump, an objective conceived and promoted by Page and others. We now know that that's not true. Page had nothing to do with it. Came from the Steele dossier. 4 points. That's it. Those 4 points were used to spy. Not just those 4 points to spy on any American citizen are outrageous. And I mean that Republican or Democrat. I've been against the Patriot Act. I'm against the violation of our rights to privacy constantly. I'm against the NSA surveying all of us constantly. This is all. Now we're told, and this is kind of another spoiler alert, one of the big takeaways from this whole thing is how corrupt the FBI in general is. How corrupt the FISA application in general is. Even looking beyond the scope of just this case and whether they're going against Republicans, Democrats, whatever. We were told over and over, it's very difficult to get a FISA warrant. And I would say 99.6 of them are accepted. I just saw a clip, I think it was on Tucker, or maybe it was somewhere else on Fox. I was briefly flipping through channel, where Rod Rosenstein was saying in 2018, he's like, let me tell you, people want to talk about FISA applications. And FISA, you have to have probable cause, and the information has to be verified, and the people that sign off, and there will be consequences if it turns out that wasn't true. People will have consequences. Well, apparently not. It's not that difficult to get. All we needed was these 4 thinly veiled things sourced from one guy that wasn't verified. That's it. Now, can we finally put to rest? Is that sufficient? I know most of the people in here probably agree with me. But will we agree to even the most ardent of Trump haters and intel official supporters that this finally puts a knife in the, but there were other things that get the reasons for this FISA application? No, there weren't. We outlined in specific detail exactly what there was. No Steele dossier, no spying on Trump campaign, period. End of story. No wiretap, at least, through Carter Page. So now we're back to what I said in October 2017. If unverified opposition research from one political party, the party in power, was used to spy on the other political party's candidate for president, biggest political scandal in the history of our country. So we know that that was the reason, that we know that was the spying. So now question 2, point number 2, the thing they'll defend. Well, it wasn't unverified. So we've already, actually, this is point 3. Point 1 was the dossier was never used. That's a lie. The IG report clearly shows that. Point 2 was, well, there were other things. That's the lie. It's untrue. We just went through that. Number 3, was it verified? Okay, to the IG report. It's page 9 on the left. We found that the FBI did not have information corroborating the specific allegations against Carter Page and Steele's reporting when it relied upon his reports in the first FISA application or subsequent renewal applications. Did you get that? Let me say that one more time. We found the FBI did not have information corroborating the specific allegations against Carter Page in Steele's reporting when it relied upon his reports in the first FISA application or subsequent renewal. So they were wrong. So now we're back to where I was October 26, 2017. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. If the sitting president is able to use the intel officials as his personal opposition research firm, spying on his opponents, by using unverified opposition research that party paid for, it's the biggest political scandal in the history of our country. I was laughed at. It's called a conspiracy theorist. I was right. I was totally right. And again, it wasn't just me. That's October 2017. We're 2 years beyond that. And I was right, and almost the entirety of the mainstream media was wrong. And the Democratic Party was wrong. And the intel agencies were wrong. And the people that were buying what they said, hook, line, and sinker, were wrong. You know who was right? Some people like Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, John Solomon, Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett. People that hate Trump like Aaron Mattei, Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald, Michael Tracy. Real left-wing people who I might disagree with their policies, but at least they have integrity. But almost everyone else of import that influences the narrative, the societal narrative, they're wrong. Almost all of academia, almost all the entertainment industry, almost everyone in Silicon Valley, almost the entirety of the mainstream media, almost the entire, in fact, pretty much the entire Democratic Party, the actual politicians, and some on the right, some Republicans, your Jeff Flakes of the world, your John McCain's. So, that's it. That's bad, right? Rob proves his point. Surely people are outraged. No, not at all. This is a victory for them. They're out there bragging. Trump owes the apology they're saying. Now, as always, I try to outline things in ways that make sense. You don't have to be an expert to understand what I'm saying. I'm backing it up with evidence. I'm using the actual IG report, right? The case I have made right now, I think, is damning, right? But just like the impeachment case, remember, what's my take on impeachment? Anytime an executive branch member threatens to withhold congressional-approved U.S. tax dollars in order to force the firing of a prosecutor looking into their family's company, there should be an investigation. I don't care if your name's Biden, I don't care if your name's Trump, or Obama, or Bush, etc. It's that simple. We can't have people in the executive branch forcing the firing of prosecutors looking into their family using tax dollars. You can't do it. Even if it's all on the total up and up, you need to have an investigation. The potential for corruption is too severe. So everything else that we argue about impeachment is just cherry. It's just whipped cream. That's the substance there, period. I don't care if everyone at MSNBC says it was okay. I don't care if people in the EU and the IMF say it was okay. I don't care at all. There still should be an investigation by the people in this country that are tasked with doing those investigations. We don't rely on other people in the world saying, no, it's cool. We don't have to do an investigation into Richard Nixon because it turns out that the UK said the Watergate thing was no big deal. That's not how it works here. Not how it's supposed to work anyways. But just like with the situation I'll get to in a second here, I know I'm a little off topic. But just like with this IG situation, there's so much more than that initial story. We also then have the testimony of Shokin. We have the testimony of interim prosecutors saying that it turns out that Biden's defense attorneys said they knew that Shokin wasn't corrupt. We have the fact that we know Shokin just seized the assets. We have the fact that we know that the defense attorneys for Burisma contacted the State Department a month before Biden did all this stuff. We know on top. We know that State Department officials were pressuring Ukraine prosecutors to drop investigations into Obama allies and into 2016 election interference from Ukraine. All of that, right? That's impeachment. I've been doing a lot of videos on that. Check them out. That's where we're at here. Now, I outlined the case on October 26, 2017 of why if we use, I went through the 5 points if you weren't here. The bulk of it is, here's why allowing a sitting president to use his party's paid for opposition research that was unverified to spy on his political opponents, a bad deal. Because it's more impactful than anything any foreign nation could do. It's the most powerful investigative agency in the history of the world. We thought 2 bumbling people at the Watergate Hotel spying on an opponent were a big deal. Imagine how much of a bigger deal it is to have the entirety of the FBI doing it. I'm not going to keep repeating myself, but just if you weren't here, that's what I was talking about. Far bigger deal than any Russian interference could be, right? That's proven already. I've proven that using the IG report. But it's worse. It's worse than what I thought in October 26, 2017. Because it's not just that this was used and unverified. It was then that's bad enough. That the FBI that's an excuse of ignorance, right? So the claim would be the FBI didn't do their due diligence to attempt to verify things. And therefore, because they were ignorant, that's bad enough. But we now know the FBI willingly withheld information that would have been exculpatory. In other words, if you're not into the jargon, basically the idea is this. The FISA court trusts that the FBI is bringing them truthful. It has to be strenuously accurate is the term they used. They're supposed to give all relevant information. So the idea is this. It's a big deal to spy on an American citizen and we claim they're a spy for a foreign country. So you better have mind your P's and Q's, right? Everything better be in order. So you say, look, here's the 10 pieces of evidence that makes us think this person could be a Russian spy, but here's 3 pieces of evidence that kind of go against that. And then the judge weighs those evidence and says, do I think there's a better than not chance this person's a spy? If so, I'll grant the warrant. That's basically in layman's terms what happened. But the judge is assuming that the FBI presenting them with the application is being truthful. And they weren't. Yeah, I agree with you, Blase. I say the same thing. I would disband immediately the FBI, CIA, all the intel agencies. I give all their resources to local law enforcement. And I would start working on a transparent administration or a transparent agency that had not just congressional oversight, but also civilian oversight to make sure that this crap doesn't happen again. But anyways. So let's get to, there's 17 points, 17 outlined in the IG report of problems with the FISA applications. Now the first 7, I think, are going to be on the initial application. For those of you who don't know, the way it works is this. You have to renew the application, I think, every 3 months. So you're spying on someone. You're wiretapping them. Well, 3 months later, you have to go back to the court and say, here's the application again. You update it to show, is there new information that proves or disproves the fact that this person might be a spy, like you're saying. And it's constantly being updated. If you want to keep spying after 3 months, keep the wiretapping, you have to resubmit an application with all the relevant updates. So the first 7 of these are problems with the first FISA application. The next 10 or 11 are going to be problems with the renewals. And they're similar. Now, even one of these problems would be damning. It would be terrible. But we're going to see many of them. Some of them are worse than others. Now, I'm going to go through them all, and I'm going to spend more time on some than others, because some it's like, yeah, that's bad, but... The funny thing is, it's almost so corrupt. It's so unbelievable that you're just like, well, I guess point 3 wasn't as bad as point 1 and 9, so, And the media is so vested. They've lied so much. They've been the mouthpiece, the propaganda mouthpiece for the intel agency for so much. They can't go back on it now, so they have to pretend like none of this stuff matters. So we're on page 9. We'll start on the right. Relevant information inaccurately stated, omitted, or undocumented in the first application. Our review found the FBI personnel fell far short of the requirement in FBI policy that they ensure that all factual statements in a FISA application are, quote, scrupulously accurate. We identified multiple instances in which factual assertions relied upon in the first FISA application were inaccurate, incomplete, or unsupported by appropriate documentation based upon information the FBI had in its possession at the time the application was filed. We found that the problems we identified were primarily caused by Crossfire Hurricane Team failing to share all relevant information with the OI, and consequently, the information was not considered by the department decision makers who ultimately decided to support the applications. It's fully described in Chapter 5 based upon information known to the FBI in October of 2016. In other words, this is all stuff that they knew during the first application. They contain the following 7 significant inaccuracies and omissions. Number 1, and this is huge right out of the gate, the omitted information the FBI had obtained from another U.S. government agency, I think it was the CIA, but nonetheless, detailing its prior relationship with Page, including that Page had been approved as an operational contact for the other agency from 2008 to 2013. And that Page had provided information to the other agency concerning his prior contacts with certain Russian intelligence officers, one of which overlapped with facts asserted in the FISA application. Now, this sounds jargonistic-y. What are they saying here? You remember there was all these claims that people were saying at the time, and if you go back to that thread I wrote in October 26, 2017, there were people saying this all the time. Well, Carter Page was under surveillance before. Carter Page was known to have contacts with Russians before. He was known. And so he's this unscrupulous guy, he's a shady guy. So yeah, what's the deal? We should spy on him. He's shady. That's basically what the FBI is saying. Oh, Carter Page had, remember, let's go back. Let's go back here for a second, right? What were some of the points they made? The big one to get the FISA application was the Steele dossier, but what was some of their, number 3, Page, you see it right here? Page had historical connections to Russia. Oh, okay. That sounds, that's background information. That sounds shady, right? That's what the FBI told the FISA court. What the FBI failed to tell the FISA court was, oh yeah, Page had connections with Russians because he was an agent for a U.S. agency in order to bring down corrupt Russian intel officials. In other words, they told the FISA court the opposite of the truth. The truth is, he worked against Russians to get them in jail. The FBI said, oh, he has connections with Russians that look shady. They left out that, oh, and he was working with the CIA to bring these people down. That's one. That's point 1. That is unbelievable. That would be like, let's just take a different agency. Let's say that someone's trying to come to the United States, become a citizen of the United States, and there's someone from, let's say, Iraq or Iran. Afghanistan, whatever, okay? And let's say this person's like, hey, I worked with the U.S. military because I infiltrated ISIS, and I learned all this information about ISIS on behalf of the U.S. military. Then I gave it to the U.S. military, who was then able to use that information to help take down cells of ISIS, right? Very noble thing. That's someone we should really consider giving citizenship. Put their life on the line to bring down people connected to ISIS, right? So let's say that a person applies for citizenship, and the people investigating it, someone comes up to them and says, actually, they're like, oh, who's this guy? You know, who's this guy from Iraq? And instead of saying, yeah, he worked with us, he worked with the military to bring down someone from ISIS, they just say, he had connections to people in ISIS. Oh, well, that sounds bad. This guy was connected to ISIS? Yep, rejection. But wait, it's the opposite of that. He had connections with them at the behest of the U.S. military. That's exactly what we're seeing with this situation with Carter Page. He was an asset for the U.S. agency in bringing down corrupt Russians. The FBI just says, you can almost picture it, like, right? They type out the sentence. This man was an asset for us in contacting corrupt Russians and helping bring them down. And they just black out. It says, this man, black out, corrupt Russians. Oh, yeah, that sounds really bad. That's damning. This wasn't an accident. That's the other thing. You constantly hear them say, oh, you know, this is how the media is spinning it. It was just some accident. I've literally seen people say, it was a couple of mistakes filing paperwork. That's not a mistake. A mistake would be if you left out everything having to do with this former Russian contacts. Maybe then, it's still incredible. You still have to verify. Because remember, the threshold should be incredibly high for spying on an American citizen. For spying on people connected to a candidate for presidency, there should be no doubt. And remember, at the beginning of the FISA application, it says specifically, the FBI agents and the leadership of the FBI knew that eventually this would be scrutinized because it was such an important issue and it was so politicized that they had to be super specific and had to be super credible because they knew that people would go back and look at what exactly is going on here. So they knew this. And we're to believe, we included, right? We included everything about he had contact with these shady Russians, and then they left off the next sentence because he was helping the U.S. intel agencies bring them down. That was just a, oops, sorry, you know, were they only using old typewriters and they ran out of ink or something? I mean, that's nonsense. Everybody knows exactly what that was. We all know it. And by the way, when we get to point 9, that story gets even worse. But let's move on. That's one. That's point 1 of 17. Not only did they use unverified opposition research, but now here is them. And this section isn't stuff they didn't know, because that's another thing people will try to say. Oh, well, the FBI didn't know about this. No, we know they knew. That's what the IG report's saying. Only 7 of these things did they know originally during the first FISA application. The next 10 they knew before the renewals. So this is things they knew. This isn't a whoopsie, they just didn't do their job. That'd be bad enough. I already outlined that. That was the first half of what I was talking about. If they unverified used this information, that's terrible. But this is beyond unverified. They actually looked into and found exculpatory evidence and then intentionally withheld it. Oh my goodness. Number 2, included, this is what they did wrong, the FBI did wrong, included a source characterization statement asserting that Steele's prior reporting had been, quote, corroborated and used in criminal proceedings, which overstated the significance of Steele's past reporting and was not approved by Steele's handling agent as required by the Woods procedure. Now, what is this saying? Remember, the only thing, the reason that they got this application was they basically told the judge, we haven't verified Steele's account, but he's so trustworthy that we're going to take him at face value. And one of the reasons was because his stuff in the past has led to criminal convictions. But that's not true. The agent that handled Steele told the FBI, no, you're overstating this significantly. Didn't matter. The FBI left out the comments about Steele's prior handling agent because that would have impeded them. The only thing they had to rely on was Steele's reputation. And if Steele's reputation wasn't that sterling, like imagine instead of Christopher Steele, they would have went and said, hey, Rob Noor told us that Carter Page is working with the Russians. And I just said everything Steele said. They'd say, who the heck's Rob Noor? Can you verify any of his claims? No. Okay, then no. But Christopher Steele, if you act like, oh, he's super trustworthy. And again, this is something I heard over and over. Christopher Steele, oh my goodness, he's been in the business a long time. This guy knows what he's talking about. Then why did the FBI have to withhold information that contradicted that? Number 3, the omitted information relevant to the reliability of person 1, a key Steele subsource who was attributed with providing the information in Report 95 and some of the info in 80 and 102. Namely, that Steele himself told members of Crossfire Hurricane Team that person 1 was a boaster and an egoist and may engage in some embellishment, and number 2 is redacted. Now keep in mind, and this will come later, I'm going to go through these quicker because I'll be here all night, but this will come later. Steele doesn't have any firsthand knowledge, right? He's supposedly this expert, which we're proving is not the case, but everything he's heard, it's not that he personally saw Trump or people connected to Trump do. He's saying, hey, other people told me this, such as Kremlin agents. I talked to my sources who are Kremlin agents, and they said X. Well, this is saying at least one of the people who some of the key arguments that were used to get this FISA warrant, Steele himself admitted, well, this guy's kind of a BSer. Didn't matter. They left that part out. The FBI did. Number 4, asserted the FBI had assessed that Steele did not directly provide the press information in the September 23 Yahoo News article based on the premise that Steele had told the FBI that he only shared his election-related research with FBI and Fusion GPS. This premise was incorrect and contradicted by documentation in the Woods file. Steele had told the FBI that he also gave info to the State Department. Now, one of the things they tried to do to back up, again, remember, people were saying over and over, oh, no, it wasn't just Steele. Steele was backed up by other sources. The actual application said he was backed up by Yahoo News, Michael Isikoff at Yahoo News. But the problem with that is the source for Michael Isikoff's article was Christopher Steele. So in other words, Christopher Steele was saying that the dossier that Christopher Steele wrote was true because he was the source for the Isikoff article. Now, the FBI knew that Steele, at this point, they didn't know specifically that Steele was the source of that article, but they knew that Steele lied when they asked him about it because he said, oh, no, I only told Fusion GPS and you guys. But they knew, the FBI knew at the time, that's not true. He also had contact with the State Department. So he lied to them. Christopher Steele lied to the FBI, and they left that information off the warrant. Why people say that's not a big deal, but it is, because the entire case for the FISA application, because nothing was verified, was reliant on the reputation of Christopher Steele. So now we know that he's a liar. He's lying to the FBI. Number 5, omitted Papadopoulos consensually monitored statements to an FBI CHS in September 2016 denying that anyone associated with Trump campaign was collaborating with Russia or with outside groups like WikiLeaks in the release of the emails. And what this is they were monitoring. They sent sources, Stephen Halper, Azra Turk, a woman named Azra Turk, to talk to Papadopoulos. So Papadopoulos is being spied upon. He says there, no, none of us discussed collaborating with WikiLeaks or Russia or anything like that. They left that information out. This wasn't, he was put in a room and he was under arrest, Papadopoulos, and he said that. Of course, then he's trying to save his own skin. No, he didn't know he was being spied on and he said this. That seems to be exculpatory evidence. Oh, okay, things aren't as they seem. But no, they left that out because it went against the narrative. Number 6, omitted Page's consensually monitored statements to an FBI CHS in August of 2016. The Page had literally never met or, quote, said one word to Paul Manafort, and that Manafort had not responded to any of Page's emails. If true, those statements were in tension with claims in Report 95 that Page was participating in a conspiracy with Russia by acting as an intermediary between Manafort and the Trump campaign. So, again, they're spying on Page. Page says, Manafort, I've never talked to him. That goes against their narrative, so they leave that out. Let me ask you this. If they were spying on Page and Page said, yeah, I worked with Manafort, do you think they would have mistakenly let that out? Of course not. They would say, oh, more proof. He admitted to us he talked to Manafort. But when he says, no, I didn't talk to Manafort, they just leave that out. The last one here. Included pages consensually monitored statements to FBI CHS on October 2016 that the FBI believed supported its theory that Page was an agent of Russia, but omitted other statements Page made that were inconsistent with this theory, including denying having met with Session and Devikian, or even knowing who Devikian was. If true, these reports contradict claims in Report 94 that Page had met secretly with Session and Devikian, a future cooperation Russia had shared with derogatory information about candidate Clinton. This is another damning one, because remember, it's a big whoopsie, right? That's what the media is saying. Oh, just, literally just errors in submitting paperwork. Well, here we have they're monitoring Carter Page, right? And Page says some things that they're like, oh, yeah, that's good. We'll include that in the application. That makes Page look guilty. But then he says other things that directly contradict that in the same monitoring session. So what do? They include the stuff they want that makes Page look bad, and the stuff that is exculpatory that shows that maybe Page isn't bad. They let that out. This isn't an accident. An accident would be they didn't include any of this information. But instead, they, from the same conversation, include only the pieces that make Page look bad. That's not what the FBI is supposed to be doing for any American citizen, let alone to spy on a presidential campaign of the opponent. I'm going to skip a bunch of this. I'll go through these ones faster, but some of them are damning as well, particularly 8 and 9. So after, we'll read the top here. 3 renewals for applications for FISA authority on Carter Page. As noted above, the FBI filed 3 renewal applications with the FISA court, January, April, and June 2017. In addition to repeating the 7, isn't that amazing, by the way? Just pat myself on the back. The last application was June 2017. I'm writing about this in October 2017. Pretty good, Rob. What do I get? Nothing. In addition to repeating the 7 significant errors contained in the first FISA application outlined above, we identified 10 additional significant errors in 3 renewal applications based upon information known to the FBI after the first application and before 1 or more of the relevant renewals. We described the circumstances surrounding these errors in Chapter 8 and provide a chart listing additional errors in Appendix 1. As more fully described in Chapter 8, the renewal applications, 8. And this is the one, by the way, the number 8 is the one that the Inspector General is very concerned about. They omitted the fact that Steele's primary subsource, who the FBI found credible, had made statements in January of 2017. January. When were the renewal applications? January, April, and June. So at least 2 of the applications after this. January 2017, raising significant questions about the reliability of allegations included in the FISA application, including, for example, that she had no discussion with Person 1 concerning WikiLeaks, and there was nothing bad about communications between the Kremlin and the Trump team, and that she did not report to Steele in July 2016 that Page had met with Session. Now think about what's going on here. As I said before, Steele has no direct knowledge of any of this. All of Steele's claims are from sources that he has. Kremlin sources, other sources, right? All of that. No one, not even the Democrats, not even crazy CNN, not even crazy Rachel Maddow, claiming that Christopher Steele himself was privy to, Carter Page saying anything or anyone in the Trump campaign. It was all, he heard this from sources. One of the primary sources, subsources. So a subsource, this is my understanding of what that would be like. So he talked to Ralph, and Ralph told him Sam said Carter Page did this. So then the FBI talks to Sam, and Sam's like, no, I didn't say that, man. So one of these sources, the FBI found credible, directly refutes a lot of the claims. No, I never said Carter Page met Session. That's what Steele said that he said. No, I never said that there were bad conversations between Trump and the Kremlin. That's what Steele alleged. No, I never talked to Person 1 concerning WikiLeaks like this says. That's what the Steele done. So in other words, the sources for Steele's claims are refuting what Steele said. Now, for at least 2 of the applications, the FBI knew this, but they withheld that information from the court. Do you understand the severity of this? The entire FISA application is based on the allegations of Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele's allegations are entirely based on sources. The sources are saying, at least one of them, none of this is true. But that information is withheld from the court. That's incredible. That's not just a clerical error, like the media is trying to spin it. That's intentionally withholding exculpatory evidence. Now, not to make this racial or economic or anything like that, but if a poor black person was rung up on charges of murder, and it turned out that the prosecutors withheld exculpatory evidence, I'll bet you the people at CNN and MSNBC would be furious about that, as well they should be. But because it was against Trump and it was the FBI, no problem. No problem at all. Number 9, another big one. Omitted Page's prior relationship with another U.S. government agency. This is like point 1 we talked about before, right? Remember, Page was an asset for, I think it was the CIA, but some government agency in bringing down corrupt Russians. So number 9, omitted Page's prior relationship with another U.S. government agency, despite being reminded by the other agency in June 2017, prior to filing the final renewal application, about Page's past status with that other agency. Now, let's pause here for a second. What is this saying? 3 FISA applications have gone. Now, it's all over the place by this point in 2017. Oh, Carter Page might be this Russian spy, blah, blah, blah. Carter Page's life's ruined. He's fighting unbelievable powers of the investigative agency of the FBI. He's being spied upon this whole time. His reputation in tatters, right? So at some point, this other government agency contacts the FBI and is like, listen, we just want to let you know this guy was an asset for, because remember, people were saying, oh, there were wiretaps on Page before. Oh, he was connected to Russians before. This was all out in the public. So this agency contacts the FBI and says, hey, we actually used him as an asset and thought that he was helpful in bringing down corrupt Russians. They specifically contacted the FBI and said that. The FBI still renewed the final application without reporting that. But it gets worse. Moving on. Instead of including this information in the final renewal application, the OGC attorney altered an email from the other agency so that the email stated that Page was, quote, not a source for the other agency, which the FBI affiant relied upon in signing the final renewal application. This is the guy I think that's actually being looked at criminally. So Page was, in fact, an asset for the CIA. We'll say it was the CIA. I think that's who it was. The CIA contacts the FBI and says, this dude was an asset for us. The FBI submits the FISA application and says, yeah, we got an email from the CIA. They said this guy was not an asset for them. The exact opposite of the truth. Now, they're going to try to throw the person who did that under the bus. They'll say, oh, shame on that guy. You don't think the people that signed off on this application didn't know that? I knew it. I should have brought this up, but I was writing back then, before June of 2017. I think that, whoa, Carter Page, it was public information that Carter Page worked with the U.S. intel services to bring down Russians in the past. Public information. He was doing interviews on Tucker and stuff about it. But somehow, I'm led to believe that it was just one bad apple that did this. Despite all the others, I've already showed you, we're on point 9, so we saw 8 before this. You don't think that Rosenstein or Comey and all them didn't know? How many people looked at it? Was it just 2 people? The guy who said it wasn't a source? No one double-checked this? The CIA contacted Bob in the mailing room, and Bob was like, yeah, sure, I'll get on that. And then Bob wrote the opposite, and no one else at the CIA decided to check it? That's what they want us to believe? Now take just this point, right? Just for a second. And I promise I'll move faster through the rest of these. Just imagine that it's Obama, or it's President Elizabeth Warren, God forbid, or whoever. And people in the intelligence services manufacture evidence in order to legitimize spying on their team. Do you think that would be all right? Do you think that would fly? That the media would say, you know what, Warren, who complained about this spying, you owe the intel agencies an apology. Do you think that's what they would say? That one part alone, I can't think of a more. If you're like one, I think it's quite clear, given everything. If you take the entire narrative, if you take everything we know, the text between Strzok and Page, the fact that we know before the P dossier briefing that Rebecca and Baker and Comey and McCabe and all these people sat around and were like, ooh, use this as an opportunity to try to get dirt on Trump. The fact that we know what Bruce Orr was up to, and he was working with Steele and feeding information to the DOJ, and his wife was working for Fusion GPS. We know that Strzok and Page were talking about insurance policies. They could smell Trump supporters. All of this, the fact that we now know that Comey and Clapper and Brennan are on CNN and all these other places, and they hate Trump, and they're constantly saying he committed treason and needs to go down, and Baker's demanding apologies. All of this, all of these high-level people at the FBI and in the intel agency, all the crap that went on, right? But we're supposed to believe this was just one bad apple. That was it. One bad apple. Even if we believe that, right? Even if we're willing to ignore everything I just talked about and said, okay, this is one bad apple that made up that evidence. Are you comfortable having a system where one bad apple is allowed to have that much of an influence? All it takes, apparently, we have no checks and balances in the FBI. We have no checks and balances in a system to spy on American citizens, even if they're for the opposition party's presidential candidacy. No checks and balances whatsoever. All it takes is one person to lie, to tell the opposite of the truth, and that's it. The FBI's hands are down. How are we supposed to know? Would you actually want us to look into the information, please? Oh, yeah, I mean, you're right, Hugh. Don't even get me started on the Veselnitskaya. I mean, Glenn Simpson testified in front of Congress that, never mind, it would be, real quick, just to finish the thought. Glenn Simpson had dinner with Veselnitskaya the day before and the day after she met with Don Jr. in Trump Tower and testified under penalty of perjury that it never came up. Now, this was his client that he apparently was working on to deal with, adoption procedures. So if everything's as it said in the up and up, she finally gets to talk to Don Jr. about these adoption procedures, the Ginsky Act, and things like that. She's been working with Glenn Simpson on it for who knows how long, and she fails to bring up, oh, by the way, I got to talk to the son of a presidential candidate about this. Garbage. But anyways, that's getting further than the IG report here. So that's just that point. Let me just fly through the rest of these points. I could be here all day. But do you understand how insane that is? 10, omitted information from persons who had previously professional contacts with Steele, direct knowledge with his work, including statements that Steele had no history of reporting in bad faith, but demonstrates lack of self-awareness, poor judgment, pursued people with political risk but no intelligence value, didn't always exercise great judgment, and was not clear what he would be doing would have done to validate his reporting. In other words, previous people from the intel agencies felt that Steele did a crappy job before. That was left out. 11, omitted information obtained from Orr about Steele and his election reporting, including that 1, Steele's reporting was going to Clinton. 2, Simpson was paying Steele to discuss reporting with the media. And 3, Steele was desperate to keep Donald Trump from being elected. So remember, we were told over and over, oh, no. The FISA application mentioned that it was paid for by opposition. Yeah, but they withheld that the information was going directly to Hillary Clinton, that he was being paid to talk to the media, and that he had said publicly, or I don't know publicly, but he had announced that he didn't want Trump to be the president. All of which speaks to his bias. Why is that point? So point 10 was, look, he did crappy work in the past, and we don't think he would have validated it. And point 11 was, and he's incredibly biased. Why is that important? Because they didn't verify anything he was talking about. They just relied on his reputation. So anything that besmirches his reputation, they're just leaving out of the FISA application. 12, failed to update the description of Steele after the information became known as Crossfire Hurricane from Orr and others that provided greater clarity to the political origins and connection of Steele's reporting, including that Simpson was hired with someone associated with the DNC. more to his bias. 13, failed to correct the assertion in the first FISA application that the FBI did not believe Steele directly provided info to the Yahoo News article, even though there was information in the Woods file to pursue it. Crossfire Hurricane officials learned in 2017, before the third renewal application, of an admission that Steele made in court filing about his interactions with the news media in early fall of 2016. In other words, they said that he wasn't the source for the Yahoo News article. They found out that he was. They didn't include that information to the FISA court. It's like, oh, actually, we were wrong. So they withheld that information that proved that Steele was a liar. 14, omitted the finding from the FBI source validation report that Steele was suitable for continued operation, but that his past contributions to the FBI's criminal program had been, quote, minimally corroborated, and instead continued to assert that the source characterization statement that Steele's prior reporting had been corroborated and used in criminal proceedings. In other words, they're boasting that Steele was this really excellent source for them in the past, but in reality, he didn't do much for them. Why are they doing that again? Why is that a big deal? Because they're relying entirely on Steele's reputation to spy on Carter Page. 15, admitted Papadopoulos' statements to an FBI CHS in late October 2016, denying that the Trump campaign was involved in the circumstances of the DNC hack. Again, they're surveying Papadopoulos. Anytime they're surveying Papadopoulos or Page and there's information that they think makes Trump look bad, they include it. Anytime they're surveying them and there's information that makes Trump look good, they leave that out. 16, omitted Joseph Mifsud's denials to the FBI that he supplied Papadopoulos with the information Papadopoulos shared with the FFG, suggesting the campaign received an offer or suggestion of assistance from Russia. Well, Mifsud's name for the first time. Yay, yippee! I have more to say about him later, but that's another example that goes against their official narrative. And lastly, omitted information indicating Page played no role in the Republican platform change on Russia's annexation of Ukraine as alleged in Report 95, which is inconsistent with the factual assertion relied upon to support probable cause in all 4 FISA applications. In other words, part of the linchpin of getting this spying is, the story is, oh, we know that this is true because the Trump campaign changed their stance towards Russia, their policies towards Russia. Therefore, that must be true that Carter Page, was being offered these gas shares to force the Trump campaign to change their positions. Only, it turns out that's not true. And they knew it wasn't true, but they withheld that information. And then you can see, among the most serious of the 10 additional errors we found in a renewal application was the FBI's failures to abide the OI or the court of the inconsistencies described in detail in Chapter 6 between Steele and his primary subsource, although reporting relied upon the FISA applications. In other words, they relied on this subsource as a reason to get the warrant, but when they actually talked to the subsource and he said the exact opposite of what was alleged by Christopher Steele, they just ignored that. And they found that very troubling. Conclusions. I'll just read through these quick. We concluded that the failures described above and in this report represent serious performance failures by the supervisory and non-supervisory agents with responsibility over FISA applications. These failures prevented the OI from fully performing its gatekeeper function and deprived the decision makers the opportunity to make fully informed decisions. Although some of the factual misstatements and omissions we found in this review were arguably more significant than others, we believe that all of them taken together resulted in FISA applications that made it appear that the information supporting probable cause was stronger than it was actually the case. We identify 17 significant errors or omissions in the Carter Page FISA applications, and in many additional errors in the Woods procedures. What the Woods procedures are is it's kind of their procedure in making sure the information that they're putting forth is being fact-checked. So they had 17 significant errors that I went through, but also many more in the Woods procedures. These errors and omissions resulted from case agents providing wrong or incomplete information to OI and failing to flag important issues for discussion. While we did not find documentary or testimonial evidence of intentional misconduct on the part of the case agents who assisted OI in preparing the applications, or the agents and supervisors who performed the Woods procedures, we also did not receive satisfactory explanations for the errors or problems we identified. In most instances, screwed up there. Sorry, I'm a little congested here too. In most instances, the agents and supervisors told us they either did not know or recall why the information was not shared with the OI, that the failure to do so may have been an oversight, that they did not recognize at the time the relevance of the information to the FISA application, or that they did not believe the missing information to be significant. On this last point, we believe the case agents may have improperly substituted their own judgments in the place of the judgment of the OI, or in the place of the court, to weigh the prohibitive value of the information. Further, the failure to update the OI on significant case developments relevant to FISA applications led us to conclude that the agents and supervisors did not give appropriate attention or treatment to the facts that cut against probable cause, or reassess the information supporting probable cause as the investigation progressed. The agents and the SSAs also did not follow or appear to even know the requirements for the Woods procedures to re-verify the factual assertions from previous applications that were repeated in the renewal applications and verify source characterization statements with the CHS. That so many basic and fundamental errors were made by 3 separate, hand-picked teams on one of the most sensitive FBI investigations that was briefed to the highest levels within the FBI, and that the FBI officials expected would eventually be subjected to close scrutiny, raised significant questions regarding the FBI's chain of commands management and supervision of the FISA process. FBI headquarters established a chain of command for Crossfire Hurricane that included close supervision by senior CD managers, who then briefed FBI leadership throughout the investigation. Although we do not expect managers and supervisors to know every fact about an investigation, or senior officials to know all of the details of cases of which they are briefed, in a sensitive, high-priority matter like this one, it is reasonable to expect they will take the necessary steps to ensure that they are sufficiently familiar with the facts and circumstances supporting the potentially undermining of FISA application in order to provide effective oversight consistent with their level of supervisory responsibility. We concluded that the information that was known to the managers, supervisors, and senior officials should have resulted in questions being raised regarding the reliability of the Steele reporting and the probable cause supporting the FISA applications, but did not. In our view, this was a failure not only of the operational team, but also of the managers and supervisors, including senior officials in the chain of command. For these reasons, we recommend the FBI review the performance of the employees who had responsibility for the preparation, Woods review, or approval of the FISA applications, as well as the managers and supervisors in the chain of command in the Carter Page investigation, including senior officials, and take any action deemed appropriate. That's a mouthful. What did I just read? They're damning. They're saying this is unbelievable. 3 separate teams, straight to the leadership of the FBI, and no one caught these glaring problems, at least 17 significant ones. Not one person raised a voice about it. It's damning. It's a failure from the bottom level, the people on the ground that were working on the case, all the way to the top chains of commands. Now, the part that the media will focus on, it says, although we did not find that there was intentional or political reasons for this. But that's not an exoneration. Horowitz doesn't have grand jury. He's not subpoenaing people, right? He's just talking to relevant things. His job is he's looking to see whether or not procedures were violated or laws were broken. He's not really looking at intent. So he found that the procedures were violated. Now, unless he came across emails or someone admitting we did this because we hated Trump, he's not going to get to that. That's what the Durham investigation will be. That will be looking at the intent of this. They'll be able to talk to people overseas and other things like that. All Horowitz is saying is, I looked at whether or not the FBI followed laws and procedures. They did not. He says, I don't have proof that the intent was because it was politically motivated. But what's he saying? Look carefully. What's he saying, right? Let me reread this part slowly. We identified 17 significant errors or omissions in the Carter Page FISA application and many additional errors. These errors and omissions resulted from case agents providing wrong or incomplete information. While we did not find documentary or testimonial evidence of intentional misconduct on the part of case agents who assisted OI in preparing the applications or the agents or supervisor who performed the Woods procedure, we also did not receive satisfactory explanations for the errors or the problems we identified. Do you understand what that means? Now, you're being told by the media all day today, and the Democrats. You've been told over and over, basically in exoneration, he said there was no political bias. That is not what he said. He said the most charitable explanation of this is Horowitz is like, look, we know the procedures were broken, that this was handled incredibly poorly by people at every level of the case. We didn't find proof that it was politically motivated, but we have no explanation. you take from that? Oh, that proves it wasn't politically motivated. No, that just proves they didn't find a smoking gun that was politically motivated. Right now, according to Horowitz's report here, he has no clue why these errors, violations, mistakes, however the media wants to characterize them, were made. What's the recommendation? He says, we recommend that the FBI investigate every single person involved with this case and come to a judgment into how they should be punished. Now think about that. You're investigating a crime. You say, you find out that a violation or a crime was committed, but you don't know the intent. That doesn't prove that it wasn't done maliciously. It just proves we can't prove it was maliciously, but we can't prove it wasn't. Now, there's a difference between because if you're smart and like if I'm steel manning my opponent and I'm someone listening to me who was like a Trump hater, they'll say, but wait a minute. Didn't you, Rob, say during the Mueller investigation, you said that just because that it's not a prosecutor's job to exonerate. Prosecutors never do that, right? They never exonerate. In other words, it wasn't Mueller's job to say, oh, Trump definitely didn't commit any crimes. An investigator or prosecutor just says, did you commit crimes? Or do we have proof you committed crimes? If not, we have no proof you committed crimes. But what Horowitz is doing is different. Horowitz isn't a prosecutor. Horowitz isn't looking to charge crimes. Horowitz is just looking, he has oversight to make sure that there aren't violations of FBI procedure. His job's not to look into the intent. He's literally saying, yes, there were incredible violations. Basically, the types of crimes he would be looking at. He's like, I don't know why. We need further investigation as to why these violations occurred. I didn't find proof that it was politically motivated or it was intentional. But that's not what he was looking for. Now, who will be looking for that? Durham. That's who will be looking. So when you heard Barr come out today and Durham and they say, we disagree with the IG's characterization that there was no willful misconduct here, right? I'm not even so sure. We'll see what Horowitz says. I think Horowitz is going to say, I never said that. I never said that there wasn't willful misconduct. I said I didn't find proof that there was willful misconduct. That's it. And I don't know. I think when it comes to Horowitz, I think that he's a reasonable person. I watched his testimony. Now remember, this is the third report we've got from Horowitz. The first was on the Hillary investigation. The second was on Comey and his leaking to the media, which, by the way, Horowitz, to his credit, recommended criminal prosecution of Comey. It was Barr that declined, which was a huge mistake in my opinion. See, I get what you're saying, Lisa, and let me get to that. What shall I say? But I don't know that Horowitz is part of the beat. He could be. I don't know. But I watched the Hillary stuff, right? He did recommend the prosecution of Comey. I watched the Hillary investigation, and my gut feeling from getting that was Horowitz isn't like Mueller, right? Or Comey. Horowitz is like, dude, my job is just to be like, here's the facts I found. I'm going to put them out there. I'll talk about it in front of Congress. You do what you want with them. I think that he was probably dismayed. Like with the Hillary investigation, he over and over is like, okay, the FBI went against policy here. They went against policy here. They went against policy here. They over and over, he's saying that, right? He's like, they did this, they did this. And the Democrats that are talking to him are like, but basically there's no proof that this was done for political reasons. He's like, I did not find proof it was for political reasons. Yes, that's true. But it's almost, but he keeps saying, he's like, to me, it was like he was trying to say, like, dude, it's not my job to come out here like Mueller and say, I'm not happy with how the media's reporting this. He's like, okay, I did my part. It's up to the Republicans to take it up. And basically, the Republicans suck. And they're not making the right points, just like the impeachment hearing. They let this stuff go away. Some of them do a decent job, but they lose the narrative. Where were the Republicans saying this? Can you name me one other investigation in history where we started off by giving everyone immunity and then asked if they wanted to willfully flip on their friends? Never really happens that way, right? But all of a sudden, that's what happened in the Hillary investigation. They're not holding the feet to the fire. So Horowitz goes away. The media buries the story. That's it. Then with Comey, he recommends criminal prosecution. Barr decides not to criminally prosecute. Comey's out there taking a victory lap. Not Horowitz's fault in this case. Now, I think Horowitz could have went a little further and said, look, given all we know about the clear biases of the people surrounding this case, there is a chance that this influenced their decisions. But I also can't fault him for saying that's not my job. I only put down what I could prove. So yeah, Michelle, I think there was Barr and Durham were doing damage control because they knew that Horowitz wasn't going to come out and say these are the right. Like, and let me put it this way, right? With the Trump impeachment stuff, right? In order to prove these are crimes, you have to prove the intent with Trump impeachment stuff. So just not to get in the weeds with it here, but we know that quid pro quo isn't the only thing necessary for a crime because otherwise Biden admitted that he and Obama did a quid pro quo so that if the Democrats thought that quid pro quo was a crime, they would have to feel that was a crime. So there has to be more than quid pro quo. And the more is they're saying with Biden and Obama, it was okay because the quid pro quo was done to help the country, but with Trump, it was done to help Trump in the election. And I've been arguing that's garbage. You don't have any proof to the intent of Biden and Obama because there was never an investigation. And you don't have any proof to the intent of Trump because no one's even remotely spoke to it. They just assume what his intent was. So therefore, there's no case for impeachment. I can see Horowitz making a similar claim here. Like, look, dude, I don't have proof. I didn't find an email from Baker to Comey saying, yeah, let's screw Trump over. So he's just like, it looks really bad. Here's all the bad stuff that the FBI did. I don't have proof that it was politically motivated, but I don't have proof that it wasn't. We have no idea why this occurred. No one could give us a sufficient answer. And therefore, there needs to be further investigation. Now, Horowitz knows Durham's investigating criminally. Yeah, Michelle, you're absolutely right. And clearly clever. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical myself that Barr will do anything and Durham will do anything. They had Comey dead to rights. They had McCabe dead to rights. Horowitz recommended criminal referral for Comey. They didn't do anything. If I argued this and I was doing videos on this, I was disgusted when Barr decided not to prosecute Comey. If they think, well, we can just out the corruption. We can just have things like the IG report, and then we'll say, see, that shows how corrupt the FBI was, so we don't need to prosecute anyone. If they think that that's going to solve things, and Trump allows that to go, then Trump has no excuse. I'll still call it the corruption. I'll still want to see the end of it. But hey, if you point out the corruption and then choose not to prosecute it, you have no one to blame but yourself. So I hope I'm pessimistic. Why am I pessimistic? Because no one significant ever goes down for crimes like this, ever. Look what happened with the Hillary investigation. Dead to rights. Destroyed subpoenaed evidence. No one got charged. Epstein case. The camera's just having to malfunction. Now, what people have told me to your point there, clearly clever is, well, they knew after the IG report and the Durham report, they would have Comey on more stuff. Therefore, they could get him later. We'll see. I still think it's a mistake to let him go for provable crimes that we see now. Yeah, and Kishki, you're right. Like, that's the other point with it, not to get into the impeachment crap, because I really didn't want to talk about it tonight, but why, if you were Trump, you would want to face Biden. The guy's inept. Why wouldn't you wait to go to the Ukraine to get dirt on him if that's supposedly what he was doing until after he was the nominee? Then it's too late for the Democrats to make a meaningful change. Instead, you kick him while he's down and then maybe get a stronger opponent? It makes no sense. Yeah, I agree. If people aren't held criminally accountable, then it's actually the worst. And in fact, I think there's a great debate to have. What would potentially be better? Trump wins. We out all this corruption. That's why I voted for Trump. That's what's happening. But no one gets held to account for it. Or Hillary won and all of the corruption stays secretive. I would argue the latter would end up being better. Because the problem is, people learn to accept corruption. People learn, once it's only going to, the story will never be more impactful than the first time you hear it. So if the intel agency's allowed to get away with this, if all the corruption's allowed to be outed and nothing's changed, no one's held accountable, then that means the next time they do it, there'll be even less of a push to hold someone accountable. Whereas if Hillary would have won and we wouldn't have seen the corruption in broad daylight like we do now, there's always a chance in the future we could have saw it and something be done about it. Now, by no means am I saying I would have rather voted for Hillary, but I'm just saying that's how important it is to hold these people accountable. So that's what's going on. Now, not the last thing, but one of the other things is, let's accept for a moment, right, the media spin. Let's say that it's true that there was no political bias. The investigation was warranted. There's no evidence of political bias from any of these misconduct. Does that really make a difference at the end of the day? Does it make a difference? Not really. I mean, at that point, you have either the FBI is incredibly corrupt and was after Trump, or they are literally incredibly inept and incapable of doing their job. The latter might be a little better, but not much. These are the people tasked with investigating, like the Las Vegas shooter. These are the people we're tasking with national security. These are the people we're trusting to not be corrupt or biased. Buffoons that 17 times on one FISA application, oops, screwed up. These weren't mistakes. A mistake's one time. 17 times all going in the same direction just in one application, and then every mistake they've made over and over again always goes in that direction, against Trump, for Hillary, for the intel agencies. Every single time? No, sorry, not buying it. But even if it was true, that doesn't make it much better. And then when you get that the media's take is, this is a victory for the FBI. James Comey celebrating. Comey's demanding apologies. Baker's demanding apologies. The media's saying this is a win for the FBI. How? Only in America, with this corrupt media, could you have a scathing report on your premier intelligence and investigative agency and then celebrating it as a win because it says, oh, the report just says they're incredibly incompetent at their job. Thank God. Woo, what a relief. We're worried it would say they were corrupt, but they're just horribly incompetent. Hooray. That's where we're at. And then, right, every single thing that we talk about other issues, right? Syria decisions, foreign policy decisions, bailing out bank. Well, let's skip that one. Foreign policy decisions, things like that, impeachment procedures, blah, blah, blah. All the entire media and Democrat, and, I did a debate with that guy Destiny and other people. Their point is constantly the same thing. It's always this appeal to authority. Well, 17 intel agencies agree. Well, all the people at the State Department agree. Well, blah, 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 blah. I don't believe them. I think they're corrupt. The only argument against them being corrupt is they're horribly inept. So even if I concede that point to the people that hate Trump, they're not corrupt, they're just inept. How are you then going to turn around and say, oh, and by the way, they all think we should bomb Syria? Why? You just admitted they're horribly inept. Well, everyone at the State Department agreed Ukraine didn't try to interfere in the election. The FBI all agrees. All the intel agencies agrees Ukraine didn't interfere in the election. What? The same inept fools that were just shredded by this IG report? So I'm supposed to ignore. For example, Christopher Wray came out. So they interviewed Christopher Wray, who's now the head of the FBI, right? He says today, in part of his interview, first thing he says, which is telling, he's like, they were like, what do you think about people that say that the FBI is part of the deep state? He's like, oh, I reject that. There's 37,000 great people that work for this agency. But yeah, there were some mistakes made. The fact that you're more concerned, Ray, about a name that people call you rather than a report just came out that showed that your agency is the worst is very telling about where your priorities are. Just like with Comey, remember? They're always talking about, oh, the prestige of the FBI. Oh, it's such a prestigious. That's what CNN was saying. You can't criticize the FBI. There's so many good people that work there. You can't criticize them. Oh, it's so prestigious. You know? The FBI, they just really know what's going on. Yeah, over and over we see, and in their defense of the FBI, is that it's amateur hour there. They're all incredibly inept. That's their story. My story is they're corrupt. But let's concede their story just for the sake of argument. Now, if I ran the FBI and this report came out, and I read just this part in the Carter Page application, I said, holy cow. 17 times? Intentionally leaving out information, having someone literally write the exact opposite of the truth, make up lies, all to spy on a presidential campaign, that's devastating. I wouldn't be out there. If they asked me that question and I was Christopher Wray, I would have said, hey, people can call us whatever they want. They have a right to be pissed. This is outrageous. I can't believe that the agency I devoted my life to is this terrible. Things are going to change now. That's what a real leader would say. But no, not this guy. Then he goes on. In the same interview, they say, what do you think about Ukrainian election interference? And no, we don't, but it's just not credible. It's not credible that that happened. The intel agencies agree, just like they agreed on Trump-Russia collusion. Now, who am I going to believe? Am I going to believe the intel agencies and Christopher Wray, who we now know at best are incredibly inept, and at worst, and most likely, according to the evidence which I provided to you, are corrupt? Am I going to believe them when they say no one in Ukraine interfered in the election? Or am I going to believe, I don't know, how about the Ukrainians that did interfere in their public statements? Like Sergei Lyshenko, who admitted in the Financial Times of August 2016, yes, I released this black ledger with the NABU, the head of it, Artem Sitnik. Yep, because we don't like Trump. We're all in the bag for Hillary. We're going to continue to try to help Hillary win. I'm supposed to believe that that comment never happened? So I can't trust people publicly admitting something because the FBI says otherwise. The same FBI that's so corrupt we found in the IG report. Or I can't believe Glenn Beck had a clip of Artem Sitnik, the head of the NABU, admitting he's talking with friends and family. They have a conversation of him. Friend says, isn't it true that Russia interfered to help Trump? And he says, yes, but I did the same thing to help Hillary. I released this black ledger on Manafort. I'm supposed to ignore that because Christopher Wray says it didn't happen. That's how insane these people are. It's like if they all, who was it? Was it Goebbels or someone with Hitler? Or maybe someone with Stalin that said, the bigger the lie, the more people believe it. Can you think of a more blatant lie? I mean, we're literally entering the world of Orwell, where it's 2 + 2 = 5. Public admissions from these people, they're like, no, it never happened. Yeah, it happened. No, ask Chuck Todd. He's outraged that you would even think it happened. Ask Jake Tapper. He's outraged. Ask Rachel Maddow. Ask the New York Times. Ask Adam Schiff. Ask the Democrat witnesses. It never happened. But literally, here's the transcript of what the guy said. No, never happened. That's a lie. Here's the audio of him saying it. No, didn't happen. That's their argument? And people we can prove lied over and over again. We're inept over and over again. What's the other video I did today? It's about this, the Washington Post, of all places, a Freedom of Information Act request. 2,000-something pages of notes showing that systemically we were lied to about the war in Afghanistan for a decade, including lies about where money we were sending was going to corrupt officials in Afghanistan, lying about how many casualties we were suffering and civilian casualties that Afghanistan was suffering, lying about exactly how well we were helping and winning the war when it turns out the exact opposite was true, lying about how much total money it was costing us for over a decade. By who? The same intel people. Just like they lied about the Gulf of Tonkin. Just like they lied about supporting the Mujahideen in the 70s. Just like they lied about supporting Castro. Just like they lied about overthrowing the Shah. Just like they lied about overthrowing Gaddafi. Just like they lied about the chemical weapons in Syria. Over and over and over. The Iraq war that they lied us into. I'm old enough to remember when the Democrats were against these lies in the intel agency. Now, they're not only for them, they're saying for you to question them makes you a conspiracy theorist and you're hurting the country. Then we get reports like this IG report. And their defense is, oh, no, it's not that the FBI is corrupt. It's they're incredibly inept. We're celebrating today. This is a huge win for us, that the FBI is incredibly inept. Yeah, clearly clever. There was a lot of claims of that. I haven't got into that deeply about Nellie Orr getting a ham radio license and supposedly, possibly coordinating. I mean, there's all kinds of problems. Like, we're literally relying, remember, it says at the beginning of the IG report that they're limited in the information they could gain because they couldn't talk to people outside the country. They couldn't talk to Comey about information once he was fired because he didn't have access to his notes because they were classified. They can basically, Horowitz's hands are tied to basically only getting information that was willfully given to him. So, for example, if Baker decided to talk to Comey on not their work-issued cell phones, how would we know? There's been no grand jury impaneled to get phone records and things like that. So all we have is their emails sent from their work computers or emails that were willingly handed over. So yeah, if there were things like Nellie Orr was on a ham radio, how would we ever get those records? We don't know. But I'm not even talking about like stuff like that. I'm talking about the stuff I'm talking about that's damage publicly available. We have the information. So yeah, I did a little video on the Afghanistan papers, but the point is that it's just another war that we were lied into. That's all you need to know. I'll bet the same State Department officials, right? The Sondlands and the Fiona Hills and the Ivanoviches and, the Taylors, all of them that were testifying about, oh, we need to give weapons to Ukraine. We got to do this with Ukraine. We got to do this. Everybody agrees. I bet they were all on board with Obama's foreign policy to Afghanistan as well. Oops, they were wrong and lying about that. Oh, well. But we're just told over and over, we got to believe them. A couple other notes to clean up here before we go that I wrote down. We talked about the Durham investigation. Durham said that one of the things he'll be able to do is talk to foreign countries, which was outside the purview of Horowitz. So Horowitz doesn't have proof that the start of the investigation was done corruptly. All he talks about with the start of the investigation, he's like, look, I looked at the laws, and technically the laws have such a low bar for opening an investigation like this that technically it met the criteria, which I believe is probably true, which is one, a reason to change the laws to make sure that you can't have this low threshold. And second, it literally sets the precedent for Trump being able to spy on his opponents for almost any reason. Right? But he doesn't know what exactly was going on before July 2016. Horowitz says that's when the investigation opened. We don't know what was occurring before then, and we don't know what was occurring with outside actors because he doesn't have the ability to investigate anyone in the UK, Australia, etc. We know that Barr and Durham have been traveling the globe and asking places like the Italian intelligence services what they offered. Barr and Durham claim they disagree with the conclusion that there was legitimate reason to start. That seems to me to prove that they might be suggesting that criminal referrals will be coming down the pipe, or that there's information Horowitz wasn't privy to, that this wasn't started on the up and up. Now, this brings me to the case of Joseph Mifsud. The Mifsud case is damning for the Democrats, the intel agencies, and the media mouthpieces. Right? Here's why. Jim Jordan did a fantastic... This is the best thing Jim Jordan's good. But this was the best thing he did, was when he's talking to Mueller during the Mueller report. Now, let me go back and read something to you. For those of you who missed, I started off my video here with an article, a blog post I made in October 26, 2017, titled "Why the Steele Dossier May Be the Most Serious Political Scandal the U.S. Has Ever Seen." October 26, 2017. I talked about all kinds of things, but predominantly why the FBI being used as a weapon for the sitting president is more of a threat to our elections than anything any other country could ever do. But let me reread point 3 to you, okay? Number 3, the problem I had. If we used unverified opposition research in the dossier to get a FISA warrant against people connected to Trump, which I was writing about this in 2017, we now know that's exactly what happened. Point number 3 I make. Due to the fact that it relied on Kremlin-connected sources, this dossier could have actually been the most direct way for Russia to influence the U.S. Remember, most investigators admit that less than wanting a particular side to win, Russia just wanted to muck up the whole system and cause problems. All they had to do was give the Hillary team paid Steele some salacious material, and lo and behold, the government of this country is grinded to a halt and division is higher than ever. Now, it's suspicious that Mueller, who was tasked with 2 things, 1, investigating Russian interference, and 2, investigating whether or not Trump's team colluded with them, somehow didn't get around to word 1 about these Kremlin officials that used unverified information, fed it to Christopher Steele, which then grinded our country to a halt for 3 years. Didn't get around to talking about the most significant example of Russian interference. I was talking about that in 2017. Now, that goes to Joseph Mifsud. Because we know Mueller said, oh, that was beyond my purview. So now let's go to Jim Jordan talking about Mifsud. It's slightly connected, which is why I bring it up. Mifsud, remember, according to their theory, according to Mueller's claims, not me, this isn't a conspiracy theory from some right-winger. This is Mueller's claim. This is the Democrats' claim. This is the intel agency's claim, the media's claim. Joseph Mifsud was a Russian asset. He gets in contact with George Papadopoulos. He says, George, I'd like to get you in connection with these Russians. They have emails on Hillary. Now, we are told by Mueller and by the IG report that Papadopoulos was the start of the investigation. This was used as the premise to start the investigation into Russian interference. That would make Joseph Mifsud, who they're admitting is a Russian asset, Joseph Mifsud is the Russian asset who is responsible for the entire beginning of Russian interference into our election. For the entire investigation. Now, Jim Jordan presses Mueller and says, the FBI interviewed Mifsud, correct? Mueller says, yes. And he says, the FBI said that Mifsud lied 3 times to them, right? And Mueller says, yes. And Jim Jordan says, why wasn't Mifsud charged with a crime then? Papadopoulos was charged with lying to the FBI. Cohen was charged with lying to Congress. Flynn was charged with lying to the FBI. So why not a Russian asset who started it all? We know he lied to the FBI. They charged random Russian trolls posting on Pokemon Go that turned out, we now know through a judge, weren't even connected to the Kremlin. There's no proof of it. As far as we know right now. That was important to charge those. But why not the actual Russian spy that was infiltrating the Trump campaign and lied to the FBI 3 times? Why wouldn't they charge him? And Mueller gets all flustered and goes, I'm not going to talk about why we charged or didn't charge people. Huh. And Jordan correctly says, either you let go one of the worst actors in this whole story, one of the worst Russian interferers, or he's not Russian. He's Western intelligence. Now, one of the things I saw today was this debunks the fact that the investigation started by Western intelligence. Because what did the IG report say? It says, oh, the investigation was started under a credible foundation. That's why Comey and Baker and Durham, or Comey and Baker and all these people were demanding an apology, right? That's what it's all about. Oh, it was legitimate. These crazy conspiracy theories of Jim Jordan and Republicans and people like Rob, just crazy conspiracy theories, right? The IG report proves it. Only problem is the IG report admits we didn't have access to people outside the country. Is Mifsud a U.S. citizen? No. So the media is running this story. Oh, this proves that the start of the investigation. What was the start of the investigation? Papadopoulos. It was started credibly. It was under credible foundation. Mifsud wasn't a CIA asset. Maybe not. I never claimed he was. Neither did Jim Jordan. Note the distinction. He claimed Western intelligence asset. Because the claim all along had been Mifsud's working for MI6. He's working for the UK. You know that Five Eyes agreement we have where we share intelligence with places like the UK and Italy and Australia? Remember Judge Napolitano before he was a hack? Remember when he got in trouble? Does anyone remember this? You turn on Fox News now and you see Judge Napolitano and he's constantly saying, impeach Trump, impeach Trump. He, like that, flipped a switch. He was against the Russia collusion stuff, then all of a sudden he went away for like 2 months, then he came back and he's for it. Now he's for impeachment. What happened? Well, remember, the reason that he was suspended temporarily from Fox was he reported that he had sources that told him that basically the intelligence service in the UK was begging Trump not to release information that proved they were working in tangent with Obama's intelligence agencies in investigating Trump. In fact, the articles were saying it actually started with the UK. They willfully gave evidence about possible Trump team connections to Russia. That's how the whole thing started. Now, I don't know if that's true, but the allegation is they certainly were in cooperation. There is no way whatsoever, for example, that Stephen Halper and Azra Turk was meeting on British soil conducting spying operations against Papadopoulos without MI6 or without the UK intelligence services being at least aware of this situation. Mifsud was connected to all sorts of schools that were connected to the UK intelligence apparatus and with the Italian intelligence apparatus, both members of the Five Eyes Agreement. Now, this is all very confusing, and it sounds like a crazy conspiracy theory. But again, let's go back to the there's only two possibilities. Either one, Mifsud is, as Mueller claimed, a Russian source, a Russian asset, a spy for Russia. He was the one charged with starting this entire thing. He was the first one to interfere and try to influence the election by infiltrating the Trump campaign. First guy, Russian asset. He gets interviewed by the FBI. He lies 3 times. They have him dead to rights. They decide not to charge him. Is there any reason for that? Or it's because he was Western intelligence. If he was an intelligence for Italy, for the UK, there is no way whatsoever Horowitz had any authority to even question him, let alone make any assumptions by what was going on. So all Horowitz is saying is, from the people I talked to, it looks on the up and up, based on the incredible low threshold for starting an investigation like this. I think if you read between the lines, the first 5 or 6 pages, it doesn't seem to me that Horowitz is thrilled with the fact this investigation happened. It seems like he's saying, like, I'm kind of surprised that this is all it takes to have an investigation like this. That's how it seems he's writing to me. Read it for yourself. Yeah, I mean, you're right, Kishki. The problem with... So, like, what is a conspiracy? And this is, in the debate I did, this is, everything's a conspiracy theory. Here's a conspiracy theory that Trump was a Russian asset. That's a conspiracy theory. The people connected with Trump colluded with the Russians to steal the election. That's a conspiracy theory. Everything in the Steele dossier, that was all a conspiracy theory. The fact that Trump was secretly trying to convince the Ukraine to investigate Biden and make up dirt on him, that's a conspiracy theory. They use that term with negative connotations, but it's not really. We were told it was a conspiracy theory that the FBI acted improperly in obtaining a FISA warrant. Turns out it was a conspiracy theory. It happened to be a true one, as we now know. So the fact that that term's just used in a derogatory manner, and yes, you can't lump everything together. I always liken it back to, I thought at 9/11, I had significant questions about 9/11. Now, I wasn't a truther in the sense that I was like, it was necessarily an inside job, but my take on it was this. Like, okay, I am 35. I remember like older people than me telling me about the Cold War, and you'd have these drills where you'd have to get under your desk because you were afraid that like Russia was going to bomb us or the Soviet Union. And then you're watching movies like Red Dawn where the Soviet Union invades and all that crap. And that was a credible threat, right? So I remember one of my takes after 9/11 was this. It was like, okay, so let me get this straight. We had 2 airplanes hit the towers, then one go down in Shanksville, right? And then the most secure building in the history of the world, the Pentagon, Somehow, after those first 3 planes got through, we still allowed a 4th plane to get through. Now imagine this was the Soviet Union in the Cold War, and those airplanes that were coming over actually had nuclear weapons on them. What chance do we have? So I had questions, how did this happen? Why wasn't anyone held responsible? We should have the big investigation. Who was fired? What policies were changed? How was this allowed to happen? And as soon as I bring them up, conspiracy theorist, you're hurting this country. And then you can see what happens as a result of that. We end up in the Iraq War. We end up in a debacle in Afghanistan for almost 2 decades. Because they shame you into shutting you up. Well, I'm sorry, I don't buy that. So I'll listen to conspiracy theories. Some of them are wacky. That's fine. I'll listen. You know? But when I said it sounds like a crazy conspiracy theory, what I mean is there's a lot of names. The problem with, and this is the problem with anything when you're talking about government corruption, it gets very complicated. Like, for example, take the 2008 financial crisis. It's incredibly complicated. I don't even understand it significantly. I know that it had something to do with like mortgage-backed securities, that basically that you had all of these banks that were lending out mortgages that they knew were never going to get paid back. They were giving out mortgages to people, you know, $300,000 mortgages to people that were making $30,000 a year. So they knew those weren't going to get paid back. But then they were bundling those with good mortgages and pretending they were like A+ rated assets, then selling them to investment funds. So then they reap all the benefits, and then when the mortgages don't get paid back, mom and pop that worked their whole life and had had a 401k that was invested in some of these securities, they lose big. That's kind of what was going on, right? That's a layman's. I mean, there's other stuff, but it's very difficult to explain to people exactly what's going on, like quantitative easing and things like that, lowering interest rates, 0% interest rates. That stuff's complicated. Here's what's not complicated. Basically, they're printing out money and giving it to their banker friends. They have a complicated formula that gets to it, but that's the end result. That's what's going on. So what I try to do is just try to make it look. I'm not lying to you. I'm not treating you like you're stupid. I'm treating you like someone who probably has a life, and you don't have time to sit down and look at the Maltese professor Joseph Mifsud and understand that he worked for universities in Italy and the UK, and that everyone connected in his life was like, well, we basically thought that he had kind of connections to Western intelligence assets. So we thought it was incredibly shady when we found out that all this time he's been a Russian asset. The average person doesn't have time. So all you need to know is it's real simple. I don't have to go through and prove all that. I just have to prove what's more likely, that Mueller, who was tasked with investigating Russian collusion, left Russian interference, left the original Russian interferer, who's a Russian asset, who lied to the FBI 3 times. He let him off the hook for no reason, or that person had connections to Western intelligence agencies. It seems the latter is far more likely. People can understand that. So the only point I'm making here is, let's see what Durham says about it. Durham's the one who's been overseas talking to people. So before that does lead credibility to Durham and Barr's claim today that we don't necessarily agree that this was started for legitimate reasons. Again, I don't know that Horowitz was saying that for nefarious reasons. I think Horowitz was just given what I was allowed to look at and given the low threshold for what it takes to open an investigation, technically, yes, they were okay to open this investigation. However, once it got to the FISA application, they violated the rules at least 17 times. So, we got to that. Got to that. Oh, another thing that was proven today was that we have on tape Brennan testifying in front of Congress where he says that the Steele dossier was not used as part of the CIA's intelligence community assessment. That's a lie. The IG report shows that it was. So Brennan lied in front of Congress. Now, I can't stress enough this simple fact. I truly and honestly mean this, and maybe you don't believe me. I hope you will, and definitely if you are someone who disagrees with me on a lot of stuff, you won't believe me here. But this is the truth. If Trump committed crimes, he should be held accountable for them. And I say that knowing, I'm shocked actually that they haven't found more on Trump, because I assumed any billionaire or any person at the highest level of politics, if you raided their lawyer's office in the middle of the night, you'd find something. I mean, And even knowing that, and that it was corrupt that they raided that office, I said, but if he broke a law, he should be held accountable. And I mean that. And if he ever does, if his administration ever does what the Obama administration does and uses unverified opposition research to spy on his opponent using the FBI, I'll say that now I'm not saying Obama's necessarily guilty, by the way, but I'm saying certainly the people in the intel agencies are guilty. They should be charged and prosecuted, and then they should be asked, what exactly did Obama know? And the buck should stop with Obama. He should be brought forth to answer questions. He was at the helm when this corruption occurred. If that occurs under Trump, I would say the same thing. Regardless if people believe me or not. And I hope that my track record, even in that debate I did with Destiny, right? I told him, I was like, I'll be perfectly honest to things. Notice, by the way, which I'll talk about that debate in a minute, but if you go, he finally put it up on his channel, which was impressive. But, 80% of the comments are from his fans. Most of them are that they can't stand my voice or that I look like the fat kid from Superbad or Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. I don't mind any of that. That's fine. Booger I'm impressed with. I really like Revenge of the Nerds, so I'll take that compliment. But, and then there are some that felt that I won the debate or at least did a good job. And then most are just like, oh, this guy's a hack. He's a conspiracy theorist. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Blah, 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 blah. And one of the things that they perceive as a weakness of me is I understood that I'm talking to an audience that hates Trump, and I'm trying to – this is an opportunity. There were 4,000 people watching that debate, most of which probably hated Trump. This is my opportunity to talk to them and say why that the intel agency is corrupt and why the impeachment stuff and the Russia stuff's corrupt. And so part of that is being honest and saying, hey, here's things we agree on. So that I was honest about things I don't like about Trump, deficit spending, bombing Syria. I think that he's right on the narrative that we need to pull out of these places, but then he's wrong when he appoints people like John Bolton and keeps us in them. He's wrong when he talks about leaving troops to stay in the oil fields. He's wrong giving weapons to places like Saudi Arabia. I criticize Trump for all that. He's right to cut taxes. He's wrong not to cut spending. They perceive that as a weakness on my part. Oh, this guy can't defend his positions. But to me, I just think that outs them for who they really are. I'm not a Trump supporter through and through in that he could do anything and I'll always support him. To the contrary, I support Trump because I think he's doing things that benefit this country and things I agree with. The number one thing is outing this corruption. The IG report being evidence of that part of that today. But there are other things that he's doing that I like, right? But that doesn't mean that I always support Trump. I support the country doing great, and I support the positions I think will make the country great. If Trump follows us, good. If he doesn't, then I'll say, hey, deficit spending's bad. I criticize Trump for this. These people think, well, the way they think is our guy's always right or our woman's always right. And so if someone else is willing to admit, well, sometimes my guy's not right, then it must be weakness on my part. I only bring it up because what I'm trying to say is all I've wanted is equal application of the law. That's it. That's all I've asked for. Look, I understand sometimes that you kind of leave a little stuff slide, right? You can't just impeach or prosecute over every little thing that any politician does. I get it. Let's take something like failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. I think it's a terrible problem. I really do. I think that not just foreign lobbyists, by the way, lobbyists in general. My solution is smaller government. If you have a smaller government, you have a less ability for lobbyists to actually be able to influence because the government can't do much to change the situation. But neither here nor there. But I understand that foreign lobbyists in both parties is rampant. People not registering as foreign lobbyists. Yeah, clearly clever. That's basically what I'm saying. He was someone that the establishment hated, so I took a chance on him because I knew if he won, not because he's playing 4D chess, he would force them to out themselves for the corrupt people they are. And that's exactly what's happened. The intel agency, Chuck Schumer told us what was going on. The media's outed themselves as just mouthpieces for the intel agencies, etc. So he's got my vote. I think he's doing fine. That doesn't mean there aren't things I won't criticize. But anyways, back to this foreign lobbyist business, right? I know it's rampant. I know that people aren't registering, it's rampant. If we decide as a country and as the FBI or whatever, hey, we're going to start prosecuting people for this, I'm all for it. All I ask is you prosecute people evenly on both sides. You don't give special treatment because one side's a Democrat and one side's a Republican. And that's the exact opposite of what we see happening. So we see Paul Manafort sits in solitary confinement in part for failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. He did so in conjunction with the Podesta group that was created by Hillary's campaign manager. They got to sign retroactive paperwork. Or lying to the Congress. We know people lie to Congress all the time. It's constantly happening. So if we're going to start prosecuting people like we prosecuted Cohen, that's fine. I'm great. We know Clapper lied to Congress. Remember when he said the NSA doesn't willingly collect data from you? We know that was a lie. So lock him up. Charge him, right? We know that Comey lied when he told Congress that he only released the data to one other person when it actually, or to two people, when in actuality it was three. And we said none of it was classified. We know that was a lie. Now we know that Brennan lied. He lied in the past. We now know he lied again. He said that the dossier wasn't part of the ICA, the intelligence community assessment. That was a lie. So charge him. No. That's what's infuriating. Now, in the grand scheme of things, is Brennan's lie the biggest deal in the world? No, it's bad. Clapper's was worse when he lied to people about their information getting surveyed. But if you're going to charge Cohen, what did Cohen get charged for? Because he was wrong about the date of when the talks about Trump Tower in Moscow ended. That's what Cohen got charged for, being wrong about a date. That's a less significant lie and a more understandable thing that you maybe forget than Brennan lying specifically about the dossier not being part of the ICA. So why does Brennan get to walk free? Why does he get to be on Twitter today bragging? The report proved. The IG report proved that's a lie. We have it on tape. Why aren't Mills and Abedin charged with lying to the FBI? We know. Strzok's texts show. He said they told him they had no knowledge of the server until after Hillary was Secretary of State. But their emails show that's a lie. They knew as far back as September 2009. So they lied. Their emails prove it. They walk free. Every single time that someone connected to Trump's been charged with a crime or suggested to be violating a crime, or Trump himself, the Democrats have done so either in a worse way or a more blatant way. Obstruction of justice, that's not what the impeachment articles, that's part of what they're going to prove. See, what Trump should have done was just delete any emails that were subpoenaed. The Democrats are cool with that. That's what Hillary's team did. They didn't have a problem with that. But Trump saying mean things about Mueller, that's obstruction of justice. Trump using his congressional approved right to take to the courts whether or not people in his administration have to testify, they say that's obstruction of justice. They're literally making it obstruction of justice for Trump to go to the courts and ask their opinion on something. They're eliminating the judicial branch. Ironically, because it's the Democrats that use the judicial branch to create law all the time. But this time they're saying, nope, Trump didn't have a right to say, hey, I'm taking this to court. That's obstruction of justice. That's what they're saying about the impeachment, right? So that's all I ask. So we see the Brennan line. Yeah, I mean, that's about all I have on this today. So, like, in conclusion, what are the important things to take away today? One, I just spent 2 hours and 20 minutes basically just on the first 25 pages. Just the Carter Page FISA application. The media was wrong. We were right. And you don't have to be a genius. You just know intuitively. If you hear it, you know it. Right? You just know it. Wait a minute. So you got a sitting president who's a Democrat, and his FBI is using unverified opposition research paid for by the Democrats to spy on his opponent's campaign. You just know. That doesn't sound right. And then when you get to the specifics, it's just, it's mind-boggling. Just do yourself a favor. Read the first 25 pages. Look, here's the other thing. I hope that I have some amount of trust with those of you that watch me. I think that I'm transparent. I try to provide the evidence when I'm talking about it. 95% of the time, I think that I do enough videos that I put myself out there that I'm open to scrutiny. If I'm wrong about something, I'll admit if I'm wrong about something. I have a bias, of course I do, but I try to be as honest as possible. And I appreciate that people listen to me. I really do. But honestly, you should, if you have chance, look at the relevant material yourself and come to your own conclusion. You really should. Because one of my biggest pet peeves in the world is this appeal to authority. Like, well, Jake Tapper said it and the New York Times said it, so it must be true. Or Jim Comey said it, so it must be true. And I'm just sick and tired of that. I don't care. I really don't care if everyone in Fox, I like Tucker Carlson. He's probably one of the only ones in Fox. Greg Gutfeld's pretty good too. Hannity's okay, but I get the feel. I don't know. With Hannity, I question whether or not I feel like Tucker and Greg Gutfeld, at least, they would be like, if the shoe was on the other foot, they would go after Trump for it. I don't know that Hannity would. Hannity's right on this issue. He's been right the entire time. And Hannity has the best guest. He'll bring on Sarah Carter and Solomon and them. But I don't watch much Fox News. I'll watch YouTube clips here and there. I don't have cable, so I'm not watching it live. But, even if they said, oh, this IG report was garbage, I'm still not going to agree with them. Or the IG report showed the FBI did nothing wrong. I'd be like, no, you're wrong. I don't care. I know. Because I read the source material. They did this study. I'm going to butcher this. I don't have the specifics of it, but they take they put 10 people in a room and they show them two lines or two squares or circles or whatever. I think it's lines though. And what they do is only one of the 10 people there is not involved in the experiment. The other 9 are all plants, in other words. And what they do is they show a picture and it's got 2 lines, A and B, and one of those lines is bigger. And they ask them which line is bigger. And then they say, if it's A, raise your left hand. If it's B, raise your right. And so the first 2 or 3 times, all of the plants are instructed to answer truthfully. But then after that, they're all instructed to answer the opposite of the truth. And then, so you're the guy that's not the plant, and you're looking at the lines, and you're like, A's bigger, B's bigger, and everyone's agreeing with you, A's bigger. Then you get to question 4, and you're like, B's bigger, and everyone else says A, and they all look at you. They found out almost every single time. Eventually, the person would give in to peer pressure. They would say what they knew was not the truth. They would say, oh, okay, if everyone says the other way, then I'll just go with them. And that's the problem. When we have 95% of the media, when we have the same amount of academia, almost the same amount of the entertainment industry, almost the same amount of Silicon Valley, and they're all invested in something so much in bringing down Trump that they're willing to either willfully repeat lies or they repeat them because they assume they're true. That idea of just everyone says it, so it must be true. I mean, that's ridiculous. And this is the case over and over and over again. And it literally ends up in the exact opposite. I mean, I know, and this is one, what's the word I'm looking for? Weakness of mine. I do enjoy feedback, even critical feedback. In fact, I oftentimes think people that dislike me or disagree with me give me better feedback. Because people that agree with you tend to be like, hey, you're doing good. And that's nice. I love hearing that. But you also like to hear people say, this is what you could have done better. I know Kishki on this very board has given me advice that helped me. So, I'm reading the comment section of, that guy Destiny I debated. And, the ones that are making funny, it's like, whatever. But, the ones that I feel there could be serious credibility in, I'll listen to. And I was shocked. Not shocked, because I assumed this was what would happen. But you have to understand, because he's left-wing, most of his commenters will be left-wing. But it just blew my mind how literally the things that he was doing were being pushed on me. So, for example, they'd be like, oh, whataboutism. Everything's whataboutism. And I'm like, but no, that's not what the case. This is all debunked conspiracy. I mean, the people that were critical of Destiny were telling him, how dare you platform a crazy conspiracy theory like this? Everything he said's been debunked over and over again. And you've probably seen the video I did on John Solomon and his 28 points. Vindman said that he was wrong about everything. So Solomon puts an article out. It's like, here's 28 points that I've made in my reporting. Each one of these points will be backed up over and over again by outside sources, whether it be actual testimony from the Democratic witnesses and the transcripts, or it be official government documents from the Ukraine or the United States, or official reporting from places like, official AP, Reuters, things like that. Actual interviews where you could listen to the audio. And I presented this. I put it on places like Above Top Secret. I put it on Twitter. I did a video of it. And literally the response I got from people was, this has all been debunked. And I said, what specifically? It's just all been debunked. Now, it's easy to make fun of those people. But how does that happen? It's because people are conditioned to say, I have this champion. Jake Tapper's my guy. And if Jake Tapper says it's debunked, then it's debunked. I don't care what the specifics are. And then maybe I'll question it. Well, wait a minute. This Republican says it's not debunked. I better change the channel. Let's see what Rachel Maddow thinks. Oh, she agrees with Jake Tapper. Okay. Even Brett Baer on Fox News agrees? Well, Shep Smith? I don't know about Brett Baer, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, no. That's terrible. What has been debunked, and it's the same with this IG report. Oh, it's a big nothing burger. Well, it depends. There are people who I tend to agree with, though I quibble with them about things. But there are people that are like, who gives a hoot? No one's going to go be brought to justice anyways, anytime, so it's all irrelevant. And I'm like, yeah, but the reason that people won't be brought to justice is because people, some of which, like you, are like, oh, it's irrelevant to even look into this. Instead, if you're like, dude, here's corruption, here's the facts, and you start to tell people that, maybe you get a groundswell of support that's like, we're tired of this corruption. But if you just instead say, I just refuse to look at anything, or you say, I'm just going to listen to what the media tells me, then that'll never happen. Yeah, I mean, you're right, Michelle. I've said over and over again, the answer to Solomon's been constantly, well, Solomon's corrupt. Like BuzzFeed did an article. Oh, Solomon's just terrible. Like, here's some of the things they'd say about Solomon. Did you know Solomon got downgraded to an opinion writer at The Hill? Did you know that a bunch of people at The Hill got upset about Solomon's reporting and demanded he be let go? Did you know that The Hill was so upset about Solomon that they're personally now investigating to make sure that his sources were accurate? Did you know that Adam Schiff released documents saying that Solomon might have been involved in phone calls with Giuliani? What does that have anything to do with his reporting? I mean, it's the exact same thing. Like, the best example in recent memory I can think of is, remember when the Mueller report's coming out? So Barr gets a copy of the Mueller report, and he gives, like, a summary. And his summary basically says this. On the idea of Russian collusion, he found that Trump nor anyone in his team colluded with Russians illegally to influence the election. On the idea of obstruction of justice, they could neither confirm nor exonerate that Trump committed obstruction of justice. Now, that's a pretty fair assessment. But people quibbled. They said, blah, 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 blah. Well, 2 weeks later, the Mueller report's out. No one, all of these left-wing people, they kept saying, Barr's wrong. Barr's wrong. It's all debunked. This is not what Mueller said. Blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, why are we talking about what Barr said? I have the Mueller report in front of me. You can easily get it in front of you. Show me what page you're talking about. Where are you claiming it says what you're saying it says? Let's go to that. And they couldn't do it. Well, I didn't actually read the Mueller report. I just listened to Jake Tapper complain about Barr's summary of the report. But then the exact opposite's true. When I'm debating Destiny, everyone's like, oh, so what, you just listen to Hannity and Rush Limbaugh? No! I could legitimately tell you, I watched 10 minutes of Hannity today. Normally what I do is skip through his monologue and I just wait until he gets John Solomon or Sarah Carter on. Tucker, I would say I catch 1 out of every 3 of Tucker episodes. That's about it. I don't listen to talk radio. Most of the stuff I get is just from authors I follow on Twitter, from places like Above Top Secret, blogs. And I use mainstream sources. I go to CNN, I'll go to Drudge Report, I go to thehill.com, I go to Zero Hedge, but I go to left and right-wing places. I do. And I'm told by people that are just repeating talking points. You're just repeating talking points. What are you talking about? I went through the source. Like, someone who watched my video tonight, right? Not this part now where I'm like meta talking about it, but the first 2 hours, someone will watch and go, oh, Rob's just repeating talking points. This is just Sean Hannity talking point, Rush Limbaugh talking points. But I actually am reading the report to you. I'm reading to you what I wrote in August of 2000 or October 26, 2017. And they'll still say, that's just Rob doing talking points. No, it's not. That's the conclusions I've drawn based on me showing you the evidence in front of you. Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, Kishki, you're right. Like, that's something that the irony of it, stuff that's not debunked, they just yell debunked. But then stuff that is debunked, like the P dossier, they're like, nah, it's not debunked. Now, if I'm being charitable, the P dossier hasn't been debunked in the sense that you can never truly debunk almost anything. Like, I could say, I can say Trump ate 10 bowls of ice cream last Tuesday. Unless I have a camera on Trump the entire time, I guess I can't debunk it. There's no proof for it. It's all garbage. Everything suggests it's not true. Mueller, the IG, the FBI, all of them, they all looked into the allegations of the P dossier. None of them were able to verify anything. The IG report specifically says the only parts that seemed credible were stuff that was public knowledge at the time, which, of course, I'd been saying since 2017. I mean, think how easy it would be to put something together like this. All you have to do is take something like, for example, I know that Dianne Feinstein had a Chinese spy working for her, right? I know that. So I could say, well, I went back and I looked and I found that Feinstein had some policies that were basically anti-tariff that would have benefited China, right? And I know she was employing a Chinese spy. So I also have information that she got peed on by people in China and she's working as a Chinese agent. Hey, I was right about the Chinese spy working on her team, and I was right about her anti-tariff policies, so it must be true. Warrants an investigation. That's the kind of absurdities that they're pushing for. So, but yeah, I'm going to be trying to do more stuff. So for those of you that are following, supposedly Horowitz, the author of the IG report, is testifying Wednesday, so that'll be worth checking out. I think, as I suggested last week on a couple of videos, I think that the rush for impeachment was intentionally timed to distract from the IG report, and here's what I mean. We all knew that the IG report was coming out soon. It's been delayed, and okay, I won't claim that the initial Schiff impeachment, I think in general it was designed to distract from possible investigations into intel agency and Democrat corruption, but the timing of it I didn't find super suspicious. However, the fact that then after the Intel Committee's hearings on impeachment, then you had the judiciary, and you had Nadler's committee do one day, and then we knew that the IG report was supposed to come out today, and they announced, oh, we're going to just do one more day and then announce articles of impeachment. We'll be talking about them Wednesday or Thursday. It seems incredibly suspicious that they went that fast with it. Like they were like, oh, we need something to counter. We lied about the intel agencies for 3 years, and this IG report's damning. So what they're hoping is they'll cover it like this. They'll say, oh, yeah, I'm Jake Tapper here, and the IG report, it's, and it says that there were a lot of violations, but the key takeaway is this. There was no proof that any of it was politically motivated, and that the FBI's start of the investigation was legitimate. So yeah, we need to work on the little mistakes that the FBI made, and that's it. Now, moving on to impeachment. Because if the impeachment wasn't there, they'd still spin that, but they'd have to spin it all day. It's easier to spin it when you only have to talk about it for 2 minutes. No big deal. And moving on. Impeachment. So I just find it incredibly suspicious. So, look for that report Wednesday, or the testimony Wednesday. I would love to be doing it live, but I think I'll be working, so I probably won't be able to do anything live, but maybe later in the day I'll do a video talking about Horowitz. But it's important to watch, because I assure you, if you get a chance to watch it, you'll come away with a far different take than what you would get if you watched the media. Because I watched Horowitz about the Hillary investigation, and it seemed to me that Horowitz was incredibly damning of the FBI in that investigation. But the Democrats won the narrative because they kept going back to the conclusion. But you can't prove that bias was the reason for this. No, I can't. Okay, that's the important thing. So, yeah, the key takeaway is this was damning. Everything that people like me have been saying since 2017, it was true. They used unverified opposition research to spy on an opposition candidate. They flat out made stuff up. They omitted key parts of evidence over and over and over again. The media is going to spin this like it's a win for the FBI. It's a win for Comey. It's a win for all the heads of the intel officials, and it's not. It's damning. So, all right, everyone, thanks a lot. Please, if you don't mind, subscribe if you haven't. I hate saying that, by the way. But if you could also recommend me to some other people. I will tell you one thing I was going to do. This maybe will encourage you to get people to subscribe to me. I live in rural Pennsylvania, so there's a town called Hershey Park, the candy bars and stuff. It's an amusement park, and Trump's going there tomorrow or Wednesday. And I did have an offer that I was potentially going to be able to go and be part of the team that was covering Trump there. And it ended up falling apart. But I am going to start to go to stuff locally, meetings like that. Unfortunately, YouTube initiated a new rule that says unless I have 1,000 subscribers, I can't live stream mobily. And so it's something that I'd really like to do. I would like to go out to like a Trump rally and talk to people, try to be not a maniac, but like talk to people if they're protesters and stuff, or to talk to people supporting Trump and kind of try to get a fair take of what's going on. But I can't do that until I get 1,000 subscribers. So if you could help me reach that, I would be mucho. What's the word I'm looking for? I should be in bed. I would be very appreciative. I really would. So thank you so much, everyone. We'll talk to you soon and have a good one.